those years as a superhero in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 676 Odin's Sleep. Loki's appearance was definitely unexpected. Because the Ancient One wanted to find Odin, because the Reality Stone was in Odin's collection. Odin knew the horror of the Infinity Stones, and he didn't even lock the Reality Stone in his own Odin's treasury, but sealed it in a special place. Only Odin could go to a dimension he opened up alone. And what does Loki holding Odin's scepter represent? Did she really get the leadership of Asgard? If she got the leadership, what about Odin? What happened? All of this was a bit beyond expectations. I'm sorry, Master Ancient One, my father Odin is having a little problem at the moment, so I may need to deal with the current situation. Loki brought a Valkyrie and another of his confidants, the wolf god Fenrir. Wait, what happened to my father? Although Thor was very dissatisfied with the marriage arranged by Odin for him, he still cared about his father. So when he knew that Odin had a problem, he immediately took it to heart. Hearing Thor's question, Loki looked at Ancient One, and then said to him, Master Ancient One, I want to have a secret conversation with my brother. I hope you can understand. I can explain to you about Odin later. Ancient One nodded. He waved his hand and an isolation circle enveloped Loki and Thor. As an old friend of Odin, Ancient One would not eavesdrop on the conversation between his juniors. Ancient One is still a relatively upright person. Loki looked at Thor and waved his hand. There's nothing to worry about, just falling into coma. Odin's sleep happens once every 500 years. It's just that the time has come. Our father needs to rest. Years of fighting have brought him countless scars. If he doesn't enter a dormant state, it will be bad for his body. Loki briefly explained why Odin didn't show up. He needs to enter a deep sleep to restore his divine power and repair those terrible wounds. Thor, you and I are both experiencing Odin's sleep for the first time. So you don't need to be too nervous. Loki looked like it was no big deal. There is no doubt that the female Loki is much smarter than the male Loki. In the story of Thor, the male Loki used Odin's sleep to deceive Thor, telling him that Odin was dead. This lie that can be exposed at any time is really better not to say, unless the person who hears it is a complete idiot. How long does father need to sleep? Thor asked with a relieved look. I don't know, according to the records of Asgard in the past, maybe 1 year, but father is older now, and the speed of recovering divine power is not so fast. It may take more time, but the longest is about 10 years. Loki whispered in Thor's ear. 10 years. Asgard lost Odin's protection for 10 years. Do you know how dangerous it is? Thor's eyes widened. So Heimdall temporarily became the guardian of Asgard, and my mother accompanied my father in Odin's palace. And I am currently the full agent of all Odin's rights, to temporarily govern Asgard. Loki's words made Thor smile meaningfully. Is this a compliment to you? If you hadn't messed up Asgard last time, and hadn't argued with Odin on the viewing platform, and finally dropped the Asgard crown, you would have been the acting king of Asgard now. I wouldn't have been able to take this position. Loki patted Thor's shoulder. I think you should understand what your father wanted to do last time. He knew he was going to sleep and needed someone to temporarily take charge of Asgard. You raised Thor's hammer, and originally you deserved all of this. But you refused, on the day of my triumph. Loki looked at Thor and sighed in his ear. Is it all worth it? Thor smiled. It's worth it. My sister, because that's your triumph day. The glory of the king cannot be shared, and there are things that you are more suitable for than me. Just like now, Odin chose you instead of me. Loki's lips moved, but she didn't say anything. In the end, she just handed the eternal spear in her hand, Gungnir, to Thor. What are you doing? This is Odin's token, the symbol of Asgard's power. Thor was a little puzzled holding the spear of eternity. It's just an insurance. Thor, I need you to be another guardian of Asgard. During the days when Odin is sleeping, you need to fulfill your obligations as Odin's eldest son. I think you know how to use the Spear of Eternity. Use it when necessary. Loki looked at Thor and said with a smile on her face. But Thor had a bad feeling. What do you mean by this? Nothing, just an insurance. Double insurance besides Heimdall. After saying this, Loki did not give Thor the opportunity to continue asking questions. She said, we don't have time to discuss this now. Let's solve the problem in front of us first. By the way, what is this? Thor's attention was diverted by Loki. Reality gem, one of the infinity gems. The 6 infinity gems were created at the beginning of the universe, just like the phoenix of the beginning, which is the birth and death of the universe. Loki signaled Master Ancient One to remove the magic circle. But Thor stopped Loki. One last question, what does Odin think about my marriage? Why did he suddenly assign me a marriage, and Sif? Loki smiled at Thor, what's wrong with that? I think Sif is a good match for you. She can take good care of you, and she will be the best wife in your future life. Wait? Could it be you? Thor suddenly understood something. But before he finished asking, Master Ancient One had already removed the magic circle. He couldn't ask these questions in front of other people, so he could only keep the words in his heart and ask Loki when he was free. Loki walked to Thor's side and looked at the Gungnir in Thor's hand with an inquiring look. Thor showed a bitter smile. He was a little confused now. On the other side, Loki was already discussing the energy leakage of the reality gem with Master Ancient One. I think it's because my father fell into Odin's sleep, so the control over the gems was relaxed. That's why this incident happened. I will take the gems back to Asgard and reseal them, but I need your help, Master. Ancient One did not refuse Loki's request. Because the reality gem was originally one of Odin's spoils. Ancient One didn't mind helping out with such a small favor, and the appearance of the reality gem on Earth was also a dangerous thing for the Earth. There's a problem, Loki. Loki had been listening to the conversation between Loki and Ancient One, so he had to remind them, the problem now is that I have 2 friends trapped in this special dimension. Before you close the dimension and take the gems away, you must get these 2 people out. Loki suddenly turned back and stared at Loki. You mean 2 people went in? This is no longer within Loki's plan. In the dimension where the reality gem is stored, Peter Parker and Gwen are moving towards the cube emitting light. People in the dark will instinctively want to get closer to places with light. In biology, it is said that insects are phototactic, just like bees cannot fly out of the bottom of a glass bottle facing the sun. Humans always laugh at the stupidity of insects, saying that they can't turn around. But in fact, how similar are humans to insects in many cases? Some habits will not become different because of their superior IQ. Peter Parker, who originally wanted to persuade Gwen to stay where she was, became more and more attracted to the light cube as he got closer and closer. Just like an insect trap that uses light to catch flying insects at night. This light cube exudes a special luster that makes people unable to stop. The closer you get to it, the closer you want to get to it. Until Spider-Man and Gwen stood in front of the cube, it seemed as if there was a voice in their minds calling them. They wanted them to touch this strange cube. Peter wanted to resist, but his hands didn't obey his command. And Gwen didn't even have the ability to resist. Peter's spider sense was constantly sending him dangerous signals. This made Peter's body tremble. Just before he was about to touch the cube, Peter pulled his hand back with great willpower. But Gwen's hand had already touched it. No. Peter pounced on Gwen. But a beam of light shot out from the cube and hit the 2 of them accurately. Chapter 677 Spider and Gwen. The Reality Stone is a very strange thing. In fact, the 6 infinity stones in the universe are the basic substances that make up this world. They include time, space, soul, power, origin, mind, thought, and reality, matter. The main function of the Reality Stone, or more accurately, the Reality Stone itself, is to construct various substances in the real world. Sort different substances and form different life forms by splitting and combining. The simplest example that everyone knows. Carbon and diamond have the same basic composition. But because of the different density and molecular arrangement, they form 2 completely different substances. One is a cheap fuel, and the other is a gem that is so expensive that it makes people smack their heads. For example, humans are also called carbon-based organisms. Although the definition is very different from coal. But it must be said that when the same quarks are arranged into different atoms in different ways, and then different atoms are arranged into different molecules. Finally, molecules construct everything known to people. The role of the Reality Stone is to interfere with all substances. Those who master it can use it to recreate the world, just like the Creator God. The Reality Stone is undoubtedly the most difficult to master among the 6 infinity stones. Even someone as powerful as Odin could only seal it up instead of using it. You know, the Ancient One, who also kept one of the Infinity Stones, wore the Time Stone on his body. He would even use it as a weapon when necessary. This shows how dangerous the reality stone is. Especially the charm that the infinity stones themselves have. Just like the supreme ring with special charm in the Middle-earth world of the Lord of the Rings. It is easy to be attracted by the stone itself after seeing it. Just like the host of the phoenix fragment will be affected by the phoenix. The reality stone is dangerous and powerful. As for what the consequences will be if you are hit by the energy emitted by the reality stone, this is difficult to predict, because most people are directly split back into the most primitive and primary particle form in the universe, retransformed into cosmic particles and returning to the origin of the universe. And Gwen was supposed to have the same fate. When she touched the cube of the reality stone, the energy that suddenly rushed out hid her. Originally, she should have been directly decomposed. But at this time, an accident occurred. Because of Peter's interference, the energy emitted by the reality stone did not hit Gwen so concentratedly. The energy that the reality gem unconsciously emits is based on the physical strength and energy strength of the person who touches it. For example, if a person's energy is converted into energy of 1 million joules, then the reality gem will stimulate 1 million joules of energy to decompose the other person. This is an accurate calculation formula. It's like those hidden predators in the biological world. They always choose the most convenient, fastest and least laborious way to catch prey. Gwen's energy value is 1 million joules. But Peter is not necessarily. Peter, who has the ability of spider mutation, is many times stronger than ordinary people. Maybe the energy that can just kill Gwen can't have much effect on Peter. Because Peter held Gwen and shared the fatal blow, Gwen was not decomposed. But this does not mean that the two are unscathed. The energy of the reality gem rushed in the bodies of the two. A heart-wrenching pain spread throughout their bodies. Gwen twitched in pain, and her blood vessels expanded as if they were about to burst. The originally fair and beautiful face was covered with blue veins. It was as if many small snakes were crawling on her face. Peter was not much better. His body was expanding and shrinking. His spider uniform was completely damaged. His eyes were red and he was in so much pain that he couldn't make a sound. When Ancient One, Loki and Li Ji broke through the restrictions and came here, Peter and Gwen were in this dangerous state. The energy of the reality stone is affecting them. They are absorbing the energy of the reality stone. Loki quickly noticed the peculiarities of the two. The two people hugged each other tightly and were too close to the cube of the reality stone. The reality stone was like a parasite that found its host, and its energy was rushing towards the two people frantically. Two mortal bodies could not accept such powerful energy. Even Spider-Man Peter had an upper limit to the energy he could accept. When it exceeded a certain limit, he would be blown up by the energy. If Li Ji and the others hadn't arrived in time, then exploding into a pool of blood and flesh would be the final outcome. Loki's face jumped as she looked at the energy emanating from the reality stone. This was not in her plan. What she wanted was a complete reality stone, not a reality stone that had been partially absorbed. If she could, she really wanted to kill Peter and Gwen and let the energy that had escaped return to the reality gem. But with Li Ji and Ancient One here, she had no chance. In fact, only Loki should have entered this space. But Li Ji strongly requested that he and Ancient One go together. The reason was that more people would be able to take care of each other. Loki could not refuse this request. So now she could only watch a lot of energy from the reality gem escape. This was not good for her plan. Thinking of this, Loki did not hesitate at all. She put on the Infinity Gauntlet that she had prepared long ago and began to suppress the reality gem. The Infinity Gauntlet was a collection in Odin's treasury. But the original owner of the Infinity Gauntlet was not Odin but Thanos. Thanos went through dozens of galaxies to collect materials and make this Infinity Gauntlet. But before he could really use it, he ran into Odin, the leader of the Nordic pirates. So the purple-skinned little cutie was very sadly beaten up by Odin. Not only was he beaten half to death, but the gauntlet was also stolen. The Infinity Gauntlet itself was made for the Infinity Gem. It can be said to be a container for gems. Just like using lead to hold kryptonite can block radiation. Under the partition of the Infinity Gauntlet, the energy of the reality stone was suppressed. At this time, Li Ji and Ancient One also took Peter and Gwen out of this space. Loki used the Infinity Gauntlet expressionlessly to take it out of the cube that sealed it. A lot of energy leaked out. This is not what she wanted. Gwen felt that she had a very strange dream, with all kinds of strange things in the dream. It seemed that she and Peter went to a magical place to explore. Then it seemed that she was hit by something, And then the dream was interrupted. Inexplicably, this is Gwen's evaluation of this dream. She felt that her eyes were stimulated by a kind of light. This made her want to open her eyes and get up. In the house Gwen rented, Leegi, who had been sitting by the bed waiting for Gwen and Peter to wake up, saw Gwen's eyelids twitching. It seemed that Gwen was about to wake up. Leegi quickly stepped forward and wanted to help Gwen up and observe her condition. Gwen felt as if someone was approaching her in a daze. Although she didn't open her eyes, her perception was extremely sharp. The man lifted her arm, and Gwen, who was still a little drowsy, wanted to struggle. But her struggle almost scared Leegi. Because when Leegi just wanted to lift Gwen's arm and use his inner strength to check her body, a white spider silk appeared out of thin air at Gwen's wrist, and then attacked Leegi like a bullet. Chapter 678 Telepathy. Gwen's change was a little beyond expectations. Originally, Leegi just wanted to see her condition, but he didn't expect Gwen to suddenly shoot out spider silk bullets from her wrist. The white spider silk condensed into ball shape and quickly attacked Leegi. Fortunately, Leegi reacted quickly and dodged Gwen's unconscious attack with a flash. The spider silk ball, like a bullet, hit the wall violently. Bang! A huge impact sound. The thick brick wall was hit by the flying spider silk ball to create a huge hole. It was like being hit by a large caliber anti-aircraft machine gun. A huge gap appeared on the wall, and the bricks and stones were broken into pieces. Leegi looked at the wall with a lingering fear. Peter can also fire spider silk ball bullets, but never with such terrible power. This power that seems to be able to penetrate the front armor of ordinary armored vehicles looks a bit scary. When Leegi retrieved the unconscious Peter and Gwen, he had already guessed that something happened to the two in the space of the reality gem. But what happened now seems a bit serious. Gwen actually got Spider-Man's ability? This is something that no one would have guessed. And this must be related to the reality stone, and its ability must have played a key role in it. Because Leegi is very clear about one of the key points, that is, Peter Parker in this world does not have the ability to synthesize special spider silk in his body. All his spider silk sources rely on artificial synthesis in the laboratory, and then rely on the small mechanism designed by himself to make delicate launches. If the spider silk launcher is deprived, Peter will not be able to launch spider silk. Spider-Man cannot rely entirely on himself to wander between the high-rise buildings in New York City. In addition to improving Peter's physical fitness, the most important thing brought by the spider mutant gene to Peter is bioelectricity and spider sense. Spider silk is not among them. And now Gwen can condense a ball of spider silk out of thin air? If you say that there is no influence of the reality stone, that would be hell. Peter is still sleeping, but Gwen has begun to wake up gradually. Leegi is waiting for Gwen to wake up with a serious face. And Thor in another room also ran over after hearing the noise here. Peter is awake. Thor glanced at the broken wall tiles and the remaining spider silk. No, it's Gwen. Leegi answered seriously, there was a little accident. She seems to have gained spider abilities, even stronger than Peter? I'm not sure. Leegi glanced at Thor and asked, what did Loki say to you before she went back, about the reality gem? Thor frowned, a guess. Not very accurate. The reality gem seems to have dispersed some of its abilities to the two of them. Although it's only a little for the gem, the energy that escaped is a lot. Loki guessed that Peter and Gwen now have some of the abilities of the reality gem. It may be some kind of energy transfer. It's like some parasites give feedback to the host after finding the host. We know that not all parasites are harmful. Thor glanced at Gwen. Obviously, Gwen is in this situation now. She must have been affected by the reality gem and gained spider abilities in some way. Leegi nodded. Obviously, Gwen condensed spider silk directly in reality in some way. This is creation out of thin air, relying on the reorganization of matter to form new matter. As Leegi was talking, he put on a 10 rings glove and picked up a pencil. With a slight movement of his wrist, the graphite and wood in the pencil began to separate. Then the graphite began to deform and compress in Leegi's hand, and constantly rearranged. It was like another invisible thug was sorting out the atomic arrangement. When the graphite was constantly compressed and arranged into new form, a small diamond appeared in Leegi's hand. But after doing all this, Leegi seemed very tired. He felt more tired than after a fierce battle. Matter reorganization. The Mandarin's ring also has a similar ability. It's called matter. Leegi threw the diamond into Thor's hand, took a breath and said, but material reorganization cannot create things out of thin air. Graphite becomes diamond because they are the same thing. And I just rearranged the composition inside them, which is enough to tire me out. It's more tiring than using any other ring. Thor took the diamond and tested the purity and said, "Can I sell this thing? If possible, can you make a few more?" Liji took a look and said, "It's up to you. But why do you want me to make a few more of these diamonds?" Thor said naturally, "Look, don't I still owe you $2 million? You can make a few more diamonds, and then I will find a way to sell them, and then I can pay you back." Liji. Disrupting the diamond market price will be targeted by those jewelers. I advise you not to do such a stupid thing. Liji was almost amused by Thor. Gwen can construct spider silk out of thin air, which is more powerful than the reorganization of matter. Just as Liji and Thor were talking, Gwen had begun to wake up slowly. The first thing she saw when she woke up was the big hole in the wall. Gwen subconsciously asked, "Who is demolishing my house? Don't you know that I have to pay a lot of money to apply to the landlord for repairs?" Well, it seems that Gwen's consciousness is still normal. Liji shook his head and smiled. Sitting in the dining room of Gwen's rental house, Gwen looked starving. She was wolfing down fruit cereal and drinking milk in big gulps. She looked like she hadn't eaten for 3 days. Liji was even a little afraid that she would break her stomach because she had already drunk nearly a liter of milk and 500 grams of fruit cereal. Wait, are you saying that what I experienced was not a dream? Instead, I was going to that place and was affected by some so-called magical gem. Gwen didn't know why she was so hungry. She asked while eating without any ladylike image. Liji had roughly explained to her the ins and outs of the whole thing, including the true meaning of the magical particles that Professor Eric was studying. Of course, these things needed to be kept secret by Gwen. Yes, and you have now acquired abilities similar to Peter. Didn't you notice? Liji reminded her. Yes. It's a bit strange. But I seem to be able to sense a lot of things at a subtle level. Is this how Spider-Man feels every day? I can even feel the breathing rhythm of the pores on your left cheek skin. Gwen is not yet fully aware of her new ability. You'd better master this ability quickly. Liji covered his left face. You make me feel like I've been molested by you. When will Peter wake up? Gwen asked Liji. She was a little worried about Peter. I don't know, but he has been tested and he should be fine. If you wake up, he should wake up soon. Liji was not sure. At this moment, Gwen suddenly felt as if there was something extra in her brain. She suddenly said, "Peter is awake." What? Liji and Gwen were sitting in the restaurant, and Peter was lying on Gwen's bed. How did Gwen feel that Peter was awake? Peter seems very thirsty. Can you help me get some milk from the refrigerator? Gwen said this without thinking. Liji opened his mouth slightly. When the milk was handed to Gwen and she just opened the door, Liji heard the first words Peter said softly when he woke up from his coma. "Oh my god, my head hurts so much. And my throat is so dry that it's going to smoke. Can anyone give me a glass of juice or milk?" Liji couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Wait? Gwen's ability of spider sense? It seems wrong, right? Liji suddenly felt that if there was any way to describe Gwen's current state, perhaps telepathy would be the best adjective. But for Peter, when Gwen and he had telepathy, it was really hard to define whether this was good or bad. Because when your thoughts in your brain are known by your partner, you may live a happy life. Of course, there is another possibility that it is very painful. Because you can't even hide your private money or get up in the middle of the night to secretly open the computer to download a copy. Of course, the most important point is that if any black cat woman, white cat woman, or flower cat woman appears in the future, Gwen may be able to sense it at the first time. Chapter 679 Why should I eat dog food here? Wait. Peter Parker was a little dizzy because he was shocked by some sudden information. What are you talking about? What we encountered there is the so-called Infinity Stone. What was created at the beginning of the universe. Then it was kept by Odin, the king of Asgard, and then due to some problems, its energy leaked. So Gwen and I were involved in that strange space and almost died. Peter was also very hungry after waking up. Liji prepared a big bowl of fruit cereal, chocolate and milk for him. He wolfed it down like Gwen just now. Liji nodded. Yes, that's probably the case. But it seems that something went wrong, mainly because of Gwen. Liji turned his attention to Gwen while speaking. She was now sitting on the sofa in the living room, thinking, with her eyes closed. As if thinking about something. She seems to have obtained your spider ability. I don't know if this is a replica or an absorption of your ability. Can you still feel that your spider ability is still there? Peter looked at Li Ji in disbelief, and then he used his bioelectricity to directly suck a cup, and he didn't need to hold the cup with his hands and it wouldn't fall. Are you kidding me, Jason? You're saying Gwen got my abilities? What a joke. Peter proved that his abilities were not taken away. He even felt that he seemed to have become a little stronger. And he didn't really believe that Gwen could get his abilities. He felt that Li Ji was joking with him. But looking at Li Ji's serious expression, maybe he was not joking? Peter was a little unsure. Okay. Even if Gwen got her abilities, it would probably be a weakened version. Hey. Spider-Man is unique. Peter Parker thought to himself. Can you be less arrogant? Gwen, who was originally sitting cross-legged on the sofa, suddenly turned around and stared at Peter. What? Peter was a little confused. Was Gwen talking to him? Li Ji shrugged his shoulders. Oh, there is another thing I need to tell you. Gwen seems to have telepathy with you. She noticed you were about to wake up just now. And she also noticed you were thirsty. She even knew you wanted to drink milk. Peter looked at Li Ji with a look of as if he had seen a ghost, then turned his head and glanced at Gwen. Damn it. April Fool's Day has been over for a long time. This joke is not funny, Jason. Listen, Gwen, I may have done something wrong. But you don't have to cooperate with Jason to deceive me. This is not fun. Gwen sighed, and then she moved suddenly, and her speed was very fast. Much faster than Peter. Even the afterimage could not be seen. When Gwen disappeared in the blink of an eye, a sound was heard from the ceiling. Li Ji and Peter found that Gwen had been sucked in the ceiling. Her palms touched the ceiling, and her slender and powerful legs were attached to the ceiling in a very stretched posture. This posture was quite good looking. Of course, it was also quite sexy. Especially when Gwen was wearing a pair of tight jeans. Li Ji and Peter both admired in their hearts. Gwen was originally clinging to the ceiling, but suddenly she looked at Peter and blushed slightly, then quickly fell from the ceiling. Her posture was very standard, as if she had been trained countless times. At least when Peter just got the spider ability, he couldn't do it like her. Standard way of using bioelectricity, elegant posture. At least 10 times more beautiful than the first time I saw Peter using bioelectricity to climb the wall. Li Ji admired sincerely. At the same time, he said to Peter, do you believe it now? Peter's face wrinkled like a bun. This is unscientific. Even if Gwen got my ability, she can't master it so quickly. This requires a lot of training. It took me at least half a year to completely master these abilities. This has nothing to do with IQ, it's a matter of experience. Gwen nodded and agreed with Peter. Yes, Peter, you are right. So I have been training just now. Training? You were just sitting there in a daze. Peter pointed to the sofa. It's training, through your experience of using spider abilities. I simulate training in my brain. Just like pilots train through simulators. This can save a lot of time. Gwen said with a smile, picking up her long hair. Li Ji touched his chin. Well, Gwen's mind reading of Peter seems to be better than he thought. But fortunately, she can only read Peter's mind. Otherwise, this smart girl can see through people's thoughts and memories at any time, which is really dangerous. Peter looked at Gwen in shock. Wait? What are you talking about? You can see my memory? Even train yourself through my memory? Gwen curled her lips. I think so. Although I didn't actually operate it, I have done many actions hundreds or thousands of times through brain simulation. Maybe there is not much difference between you and me in terms of proficiency, Peter. But I have to say that spider abilities are really interesting. But the fact that you can't directly condense spider silk is a flaw. But fortunately, I didn't do that. Gwen said as if she was showing off. At the same time, a ball of spider silk condensed out of thin air at her wrist, and the spider silk was unfolded into different forms. Spider webs, spider silk balls, thin spider silk, multiple strands of spider silk, etc. But my ability seems to be only able to construct spider silk, and I can't construct other things. Gwen said with a little regret. But just this alone made Peter feel very annoyed. He shouted, this is not fair. You have my ability, and you can also create spider silk out of thin air. You can even read my memory. Damn. This is not fair. Can you read all my thoughts? It's not that outrageous. It's a very strange feeling. It seems that I can communicate with your thoughts, but it's not unlimited. I can only know your current emotions and keywords, and I need strong emotions to perceive them. But it's impossible to know the details of all thoughts. This is not a kind of mind reading, but more like an emotional connection. Gwen said thoughtfully. As for the use of spider power, it may be because I use the spider power, so it's a special edition. It's more like the spider sense is transmitted to me. Peter, calm down. Don't you feel a very strange feeling? I can sense your spider sense. What about you? Gwen's words calmed Peter's originally anxious and slightly angry mood. He began to try to feel his spider sense. A brand new feeling filled Peter's senses. He felt that the spider sense began to expand, and he could sense more and more things, and many things on a subtle level began to be sensed. Many details that would have been ignored were revealed. This feeling was like a 720p monitor suddenly upgraded to 4K resolution. Many things became unusually clear and realistic. The dual spider senses affected each other, just like a signal amplifier. And this effect was 1 + 1 greater than 2. Oh my god. I feel great. I have never observed everything like this on a subtle level. Peter felt that at least he did not get any benefits. Li Ji asked, sharing the sense. Yes, even better than this. Peter said and turned his attention to Gwen, who was also sensing the surroundings, but he felt that he seemed to have done something wrong. Because in just a moment, Peter felt that he couldn't help but bleed from his nose. Because when the dual spider sense is amplified to sense a person, especially when this person is the signal source of another spider sense, everything is revealed. Gwen seemed to be wearing nothing in Peter's perception, and Peter even had a nearly real touch. Peter's emotions began to stir strongly, and Gwen read Peter's thoughts at this moment, and her cheeks suddenly became red. Her fair cheeks were stained with the color of red apples. A ball of spider silk condensed in her hand, and then shot towards Peter. Gwen yelled, "Peter Parker!" Peter dodged Gwen's spider silk ball, and then immediately realized that his emotions and thoughts were known by Gwen. He immediately raised his hands in surrender and said, "Wait, Gwen, I didn't mean it, don't be angry, wait." Peter, who was about to apologize, suddenly stopped. He seemed to have noticed something, and then looked at Gwen with a weird face. "Are you angry?" "No, you are not angry." "Or what is hidden in the angry emotion?" "Wait, there is also a hint of happiness hidden in the anger." Peter suddenly realized something. Not only Gwen can read his thoughts and emotions. This ability is two-way, but he just discovered it. Now it was Gwen's turn to be surprised. She anxiously shouted to Peter, "Don't snoop into my thoughts." "I'm sorry, dear. But this is a two-way channel. I can't close it." Peter suddenly felt that it was worth it to be half dead by the reality gem. And this thought was obviously known by Gwen, and she started shooting spider silk balls at Peter again. But this time Peter began to respond to Gwen with a smile, and even played with her. Because Peter knew that Gwen was not completely angry. Beating is love, scolding is love. If you show your affection in front of others by beating and scolding, you will definitely break up quickly in the future. Li Ji opened his mouth, then pushed his jaw with his tongue, and forced himself to take back a MMP. Why did he have to watch two spiders show their affection in this place, and be forced to feed dog food? Even the two spiders didn't notice that there was a wild dog eating dog food here. At this moment, Li Ji missed Lamb very much. He suddenly wanted to hold her in his arms and whisper softly in her ear. Say some sweet words to her, kiss her earlobe if possible. Or hold her hand and cook together, which may be a great thing. Li Ji wants to find Lan right now. Even if she teleports him to the other side of the earth, it will be worth it. P.S. Dedicated to the upcoming Chinese Valentine's Day, I wish you all a happy dog food. Here I will sprinkle some dog food first to satisfy your hunger. Chapter 680 The Ring That Cannot Be Returned. Gwen and Peter were showing off their love like crazy. The scene was so chaotic that it was unbearable to watch. Li Ji was very angry and decided to leave this damn place. Even a hungry stray dog has dignity. So Li Ji went to find Thor in another room. But this guy was browsing the London travel product catalog. "What are you doing?" Li Ji asked after taking a look at the magazine in Thor's hand. "Travel souvenirs, see what specialties London has. In addition to candy, I need to find something else." Thor patted the two huge snakeskin bags beside him. They were filled with various candies purchased from London stores. Considering the sweetness of British candy, Li Ji felt that his teeth were about to fall out just by looking at the packaging. "You brought so much candy to the children in the welfare home? Are you planning to let them go to the dentist before Halloween? I'm not stupid enough to give them all at once. And other people also need to bring gifts, okay? Thor rolled his eyes at Li Ji and continued to browse the product catalog. Li Ji noticed that this product catalog seemed to recommend women's shopping options. Are you going to bring a gift for Sif? Li Ji regretted asking this question. Because Thor answered the next moment, not only Sif, but also Jane Foster and Christine. Oh my god. I need to prepare 3 gifts. No duplication and no confusion. Too difficult. Li Ji wanted to take out the thunder blade and chop the hateful European in front of him into pieces. So he decided to stay away from these crazy dog food guys. He still had business to do. About that strange guy, Daisy Johnson. Is she a mutant? Or what? How did her ability come from? Is she an independent person or is there an organization behind her? These things still need to be investigated clearly. As for the reality gem, it has been taken away by Loki now. Because this thing originally belonged to Asgard. Li Ji didn't think about killing people to steal treasures. Guys? To a large extent, the disadvantages of getting the Infinity Gem are more than the benefits. It's best not to get too involved with the Infinity Gem. Of course, if the Infinity Stones fell on the ground, Li Ji would bend down to pick them up. Daisy is currently being temporarily imprisoned by Li Ji in her original room. That is, next to Gwen. Thor is watching her now, not letting her escape. Daisy Johnson is now trapped by Li Ji's black domain, and she is not aware of what is happening outside. Li Ji summoned his Nightwalker's outfit and launched his food truck at the same time. Pa. Li Ji snapped his fingers at Thor. Do me a favor, knock out the girl inside the moment I remove the black domain, but don't hurt her, okay? Thor waved his hand. No problem, but you are so gentle to the girl. Why didn't I see you being so gentle and caring to Professor Eric? Professor Eric has your sister to solve it. She has the mind scepter and mind magic. She has more ways to solve the problem. It's not my turn to care. And speaking of it, this is a mistake on Asgard's side. If you have time, I think you should go back to Asgard to take a look. Li Ji removed the black domain, and Thor also acted quickly. The moment the black domain was removed, Daisy was knocked unconscious. Carry her onto my cart. Li Ji pointed to his food cart. Thor put Daisy on the food cart with a strange expression. I always feel that it is strange to put a big living person on the food cart. It's as if I am not holding a living person but a big piece of beef. Huh? Where did you get this weird idea from? Li Ji couldn't help but want to pry open Thor's head to see how strange the structure inside was. It's Peter. Thor sold Spider-Man without hesitation. Ever since he started reading the Hong Kong comics you collected, he has been obsessed with Hong Kong things, including some old movies and so on. When you were not at home, I watched Human Meat barbecued pork buns and ate Immortal's restaurant with him. Do you Asians really eat those things? I mean those special things. Thor was very curious. Then you should watch The Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal. It will probably open your eyes. Li Ji shook his head, and then he was too lazy to pay attention to Thor. The cart was pushed, and the space gate opened, heading to New York. Did you go to London? You're back so soon? A little earlier than I expected. Tony Stark was talking to Li Ji in his laboratory. But he didn't look very good. Li Ji noticed this and asked, "What's wrong with your complexion?" Tony waved his hands. "Nothing, I'm just a little overworked lately." Huh? Li Ji looked at him with some confusion and said, "I remember you started to abstain from sex recently? Isn't Pepper in charge of you? You're getting married soon." Thor took a deep breath. "Yes, it's just because of Pepper." "Wow!" Li Ji exclaimed in admiration. "I really didn't expect Miss Pepper to be so amazing. You seem to have misunderstood something." Tony looked at Li Ji's face with a strange expression and immediately knew that he had misunderstood something. "I think you must have misunderstood something. I'm just too tired from choosing wedding photos all over the world and taking wedding photos, okay? This is even worse than me wearing an iron armor and fighting the Mandarin over New York. How can Pepper be so energetic?" Tony Stark held his forehead. Oh. Li Ji lost interest immediately after hearing the truth, but he reminded Tony, "You can take wedding photos or get married. But there is one thing you have to do, Tony." "Tony, what?" "The ring. The ring." Li Ji pointed to his finger. "I gave you one of the magic rings that day so that you could propose to Pepper. But you should give it back to me." Tony said with an expression that you are not mistaken. "Give it back to you? That's the engagement ring. Who asked you to butt in that day? I'm getting married for no reason. Pepper wears that ring every day now, and doesn't even take it off when taking a shower. I don't have the chance to take it off at all, okay? If you were engaged, would you have the ability to try to convince Len to take the ring off your hand? If you can, then there is only one situation, that is, the two of them are finished. Tony patted the back of his hand, so don't think about the ring problem. At least for the time being, I can't see any hope of getting it back. You are asking for trouble. Hey. I'm helping you solve the most important thing in your life, okay? Otherwise, you might see Pepper run away with someone else and marry someone else. Maybe the person she's going to marry is your driver. Luigi said dissatisfiedly. Haha. My driver. Tony sneered twice with disdain. But soon his face suddenly changed and he grabbed Luigi's collar. Have you discovered something? About the relationship between Happy and Pepper. I always think Happy looks at Pepper with a weird look. Damn. I should fire him. Calm down, calm down. I'm just talking nonsense. Please don't cause trouble for your driver and bodyguard, okay? It's not easy to find a driver and bodyguard who can tolerate your personality. Luigi felt that he seemed to have said something wrong, so he immediately changed the subject and said, let's talk about business. I need to thoroughly understand where this girl came from. Who is she really? Is there an organization behind her? Is she a mutant? Or does she have any bad intentions? And these may be related to this very important thing. What I mentioned to you in London before. Luigi pointed to Daisy, who was still sleeping, and said, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 681, The Skrulls Preparing to Attack. Well, for the time being, Luigi felt that one of his magic rings would not be returned. And that magic ring was Mind, a ring that had the ability to hypnotize others' minds. Luigi thought that if Pepper suddenly mastered the use of the ring one day, would she use it to hypnotize Tony or something? Luigi had always suspected that Pepper had actually genetically castrated Tony, making Tony's sperm unable to conceive with women other than Pepper. This can be seen from the fact that Tony has never been rumored to have an illegitimate child for so many years. You know, Tony has had one-night stands, short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and there are probably not 1,000, but probably 800 women around him. So many times without any accidental discharge? So many times without any accidental pregnancy? Please. If there is a scheming bitch who wants to blackmail Tony, she will deliberately do some tricks in the protection measures and deliberately have an accidental pregnancy. Then no matter whether the child is born or not, as long as she is pregnant, Tony would have to pay a staggering amount of money if the scheming bitch secretly gave birth to the child and then sued for child support. Tony would be skinned alive. He is a world-class rich man, and this kind of compensation is calculated in billions, and the unit is still US dollars. So maybe it is actually a good thing that Pepper secretly castrated Tony Stark? Luigi thought with some malice. At least this guarantees the purity of Tony's future children's bloodline? At least Pepper looks much better as a mother than those women who casually hooked up with Tony. And she doesn't care much about money. At least Pepper won't use the child as a threat to blackmail Tony for tens of billions of dollars or something. But if Pepper can castrate Tony genetically, maybe she will do something else after she masters the mind ring. You know, in many stories, the protagonists who have gained hypnosis ability have done all kinds of strange things. Luigi silently lit candles for Tony in his heart. Luigi was not going to torture Daisy himself. Because he was not very good at this kind of thing. Professional matters should be left to professionals. For example, Professor Charles Xavier was studying the special beef that Luigi brought to the Venus base. When Luigi brought the unconscious Daisy to the Venus base, Professor Charles and Professor Hank were arranging the genetic similarities and differences of the beef, and further decomposition and analysis of the Skrull beef. There is good news. We have decomposed some abnormal genes. Although we cannot rule out the possibility of genetic mutation of the beef itself. But when we did the same experiment on 20 different pieces of beef, we got the same data. Professor Charles briefly told Luigi about the progress of the recent experiment. We can basically be sure here that this is not a possibility of a single cow mutating. Rather, From the perspective of the entire group, the beef from the Enris Ranch does have a big problem. We don't know yet whether the beef that has entered the market is harmful to the human body. Li Ji reminded Professor Charles, I think it should be okay. If it is really harmful, the beef from the Enris Ranch has been supplied to many steakhouses in Los Angeles for more than 10 years. If there is really any harm, it would have been found out long ago. What we are wondering now is what exactly this creature is. Are they really cows? In terms of gene comparison, we have done in nearly 1,000 experiments. Professor Charles touched his bald head and said, 98% of the genes of these beefs are exactly the same as normal beef. But there are still 2% that are different, right? Li Ji is more concerned about what the difference is. Yes, the problem lies in that 2%. A special gene with extremely strong fusion. It's a bit like the camouflage color of a chameleon. A self-protection mechanism of an organism. But this kind of thing should not appear in beef cattle. Professor Charles said seriously. Based on the current judgment, it can be concluded that these beef cattle are most likely not the Earth creatures we are familiar with. Unless they are a new species that has not yet been discovered, the only judgment is that they are very likely alien creatures. To be more precise, they are alien life forms. Okay. Li Ji patted his cheeks with both hands. The Earth is getting more and more lively. Now alien cows have appeared. Maybe next time we will have to face aliens. The excuse for those aliens to attack the Earth is, we have lost a group of cattle. Now we have to search your planet. Please temporarily give up armed resistance. Then they found that their cattle were eaten by the Earthlings, so they declared war on the Earth on the grounds that the Earthlings harmed the property of other civilizations. Charles shook his head. I hope what you said will not come true. It's hard to say. That's why we need to first build a solar system defense circle. Starting from Pluto, we must be prepared to snipe any malicious alien civilization. Li Ji spread his hands, then he pointed at the unconscious Daisy and said, Professor, I need your help with this. There's a strange girl here. Her ability is very similar to that of a mutant, but she is not a mutant. I want you to help me. Li Ji and Professor Charles turned their attention to Daisy. However, their previous conversation began to show bad signs, because according to Murphy's Law, when things have a chance to develop in a bad direction, they will definitely develop in the worst direction. And this is why the crow's mouth is always more effective than the words of blessing. Just when Li Ji and Charles were discussing the Skrull alien cows, of course, they don't know yet that these cows are transformed from Skrulls. The distress radio waves sent by the Dragon Star Fiefin Long to the cosmic civilization Empire Skrull civilization are being amplified by the sun, and the Skrulls are broadcasting. And the Skrull signal is a bit eye-catching on the way from the Milky Way to the Andromeda Galaxy. Because the Milky Way is the territory of the Nova Corps. Although the Skrull Empire is very strong, it is better not to provoke the Nova Corps if you can. For the Nova Corps, which had been dealing with the Skrulls for a long time, the Skrull signals were still very eye-catching. Even before the 7th Skrull Emperor received the distress signal, a team of non-staff members of the Nova Corps intercepted the signal. However, because it took some time to crack the signal, the time when this team of non-staff members really knew the meaning of the signal was actually almost synchronized with the time of the 7th Skrull Emperor. The 7th Skrull Emperor read the distress communication expressionlessly. A backward civilization in the Milky Way actually feeds on the noble Skrulls? Exclamation mark. Even included them in the food chain? Exclamation mark. This is unacceptable. The Skrulls destroyed the dragon people because they ate a noble. And Earth, a small civilization that can't even leave its own star system, dares to challenge the majesty of the Skrull Empire? Exclamation mark. Notify my generals that we need to launch an attack on the Milky Way. The 7th Skrull Emperor said in a cold tone. Chapter 682 Let the Pirates Fight. The order of Emperor Skrull Vidai is the highest instruction for the Skrull Empire. His words are followed by his law. Especially when this emperor has a high prestige and means of power, his power will become even greater. In less than 12 Earth hours after the order of Emperor Skrull Vidai was conveyed, the top military officials of the Skrull Empire, whose territory covers most of the Andromeda Galaxy, has more than 1,000 directly habitable colonized planets, hundreds of thousands of high-level resource planets, and countless low-level resource planets, came from all directions. They came to the capital of the Skrull Empire, Alpha in the Andromeda Galaxy. This planet, which is about 1.5 times larger than the Earth, is home to about 40,000 Skrulls. It is the Skrull planet with the highest population density, except for some industrial planets. Emperor Skrull Vijay met with generals and frontier officials from different star regions in his palace. He needed to discuss plans and possibilities for war against the Milky Way. The third arm of the Milky Way, a place called Earth? It's 2.2 million light-years away from us. The one who spoke was the Skrull Empire, the supreme commander of the Andromeda Galaxy's outer defense circle, Udal. Declaring war on the Milky Way is not a good move, because the headquarters of the Nova Corps is on the fourth arm of the Milky Way. If our army is deployed in large numbers, it is impossible to hide from the surveillance of the Nova Corps. They are too nosy. Udal frowned and said with a cold face of his green Skrull star, and because of the Nova Corps, we have not built any stargates in the direction of the Milky Way. If we use Titan-class battleships to make space jumps, perhaps hundreds of years will have passed by the time we arrive at Earth. Emperor Skrull Vijay crossed his fingers. Then what about sending an advance team? If we jump with 100 assault ships as a unit, when can our army reach Earth at the earliest? If it is an assault ship with speed as its specialty, 100 assault ships will jump together, and it will only take about 3 years to travel to Earth lightly. Udal thought for a while. Interstellar jumps are not something you can just do by giving the accelerator like driving a car. This requires many considerations, including the interference effect caused by the mutual pulling between the jump channels open during the jump. The larger the mass of the spacecraft, the greater the interference effect, and the wider the range of the interference. Short-distance jumps may not make much difference, such as the distance from the Earth to Pluto, because the distance is too short and there is no big feeling. But when the jump distance exceeds a certain length, the interference effect will come into play. It will cause a huge deviation in the direction of the jump, and you may sail to a completely unfamiliar star field and get lost. If you encounter the worst-case scenario, you can even jump directly into the interior of a star and even cause the star to explode. If this happens, a team of interstellar fleets will suffer heavy losses. Therefore, the larger the fleet, the more calculations are required for interstellar jumps. In the interstellar fleet, the control of warships is highly automated, and there are actually few places where manpower is needed. And the most important thing that really requires people to deal with complex situations is to consider the interference caused by the jump. The fleet commander needs the staff and technical officers below to constantly coordinate the data and arrange the jump of the entire fleet. Avoid all possible dangerous routes. Just like the sailing ships in the Age of Discovery need to avoid the reefs that may appear under the sea. The seemingly calm universe is actually not safe. The cosmic rays that are everywhere in the universe are a test for the interstellar fleet. The area where the Earth is located is a very calm area, and only in this area with gentle cosmic tides can life be born. And those areas with strong cosmic rays and huge cosmic tides are like tsunamis or reefs on the sea. They can make all interstellar fleets sink. The energy emitted by cosmic rays is enough to kill any creature that is not prepared for protection. The gravity brought by the terrible cosmic tide can easily tear the entire solar system, even a star system 10 times larger than the solar system, into pieces. Even interstellar jumps cannot pass through such a place. Going there is simply gambling with life. Because of the relationship with the Nova Corps, the Skrulls maintain a subtle attitude towards the Milky Way. They don't really want to touch this private land of the Nova Corps. The exploration of the Milky Way is not going very smoothly. Just like the Age of Exploration, ships were needed to explore new routes. The exploration of the universe is also a dangerous task, and the distress message received by Emperor Skrull Vijay came from an exploration ship that went out to explore the third arm of the Milky Way more than 20 years ago. They are explorers and scientists who map the universe for the Empire. Just like the navigators who mapped the navigation charts in the Age of Exploration, they are an important asset of this country. They draw star maps and look for planets that can be settled and colonized. At the same time, they are also looking for any possible resource planets. Without these people, the Skrull Empire is like a blind man in the dark universe. There is no possibility of resisting the powerful space fleet when it hits the cosmic tide. Just like a sandcastle built on the beach cannot resist a tsunami. So when he heard that Udal could send a team of assault ships to the Earth within 3 years, Emperor Skrull Vijay began to think about whether it was worth it. Sending a large fleet is impossible. In addition to teaching the Earthlings a lesson, Emperor Vijay also wants to rescue the trapped Skrulls. If hundreds of years have passed, the Skrulls trapped on the Earth might have died long ago. Because from the request for help sent by the Skrulls, their lives are worse than death. They were controlled by the Earthlings and forced to become a creature called cow. This creature is one of the main sources of meat for humans on Earth. Humans forced the Skrulls who turned into cows to reproduce and give birth to offspring. Then they were slaughtered for meat. Emperor Skrull VI could not tolerate such a thing anyway. Can 100 assault ships and light equipment destroy the Earthlings? From the information, the Earthlings have begun to move towards cosmic civilization. And they have mastered thermonuclear weapons. Although it is only the initial use, it can already have a lethal effect on our light assault ships. Emperor Skrull VI knocked on the table. Udall continued with his deadpan face and said, if our goal is just a rescue operation and to teach the people of Earth a lesson, then it is enough. But it may not be enough to completely wipe out a race. Because the meaning of traveling light is that we cannot carry weapons of mass destruction. It is impossible to destroy a planet by relying solely on laser cannons and electromagnetic weapons. In particular, the combat effectiveness of laser cannons is greatly reduced after entering the atmosphere. We may need to change our thinking, Your Majesty. Go to the Milky Way and destroy a civilized planet under the jurisdiction of the Nova Corps right under their noses, even if it is just an early form of cosmic civilization. This is likely to anger them. Is it worth it for us to do this? Udall reminded the VIth Emperor tactfully. The VIth Skrull Emperor did not look at Udall. He was just fiddling with his gemstone scepter and said in a cold tone, on that shipwrecked spacecraft is my nephew, Prince Julian of the Skrulls. He risked his life in the universe for the continuation of our civilization. He was even eaten as beef. What do you think we should do? My Supreme Commander of the Outer Defense Corps. Udall, shut up. Now everyone knows the determination of Emperor Skrull VI. The Earthlings must be destroyed. He needs the destruction of the Earth to bury his nephew. The killing of the Skrull Prince on Earth is an extremely serious matter in itself. From various perspectives, it is reasonable for the Skrulls to bury the entire Earth civilization. Some generals even think that the destruction of just an early form of cosmic civilization is not enough to offset the hatred. Even the Nova Corps should be pulled in, at least to make them apologize. Although a lot of words have been said, there is a practical problem facing the Skrulls. That is, how to destroy the Earth civilization? It takes too much time to send a fleet or build a Stargate for hundreds of years. It will even give the Earthlings a long time to increase their own civilization's strength. Therefore, the most critical thing is to take revenge quickly and fiercely. Just as the Skrull generals were discussing, the commander of the Royal Guards, who was sitting in the third seat on the right-hand side of Emperor Skrull VI, spoke up. Why do we have to send troops to Earth in person? Why should we send our brave warriors on a long expedition to deal with an early cosmic civilization? His words attracted the attention of others, and everyone looked at him. The commander of the Royal Guards continued, I know that there is a group of locusts wandering on the edge of the Milky Way. They are pirates and murderers. They make a living by destroying and seizing the resources of other weak civilizations. We can hire them and let them do this for us. Emperor Skrull VI nodded slowly and asked, what are the names of these people? The commander of the Royal Guards replied respectfully, Chitauri. Chapter 683, The Skrulls preparing to open the Hell difficulty dungeon. Earthlings. They are definitely different from the Skrulls, or in most advanced civilizations in the universe. The most unique thing about them is the huge population. The Skrull generals looked through the data of Earthlings, sent by Fief and Long, in detail, and everyone was stunned by the population of Earthlings. 7 billion people. This is an older general. He showed no signs of shock when he saw the data. And 7 billion people, living together on a barren planet. There is a lack of high-energy isotopes and high-strength metal ores. Except for a lot of water, this planet is as barren as a desert. This is an evaluation of the Earth by an interior minister. They are just like a bunch of bugs crowded on a dung egg, repeatedly absorbing the nutrients that have been digested in the dung. And then they have to desperately protect this dung egg. Maybe the more barren the place, the more tenacious the life that appears. The interior minister said with some disdain as he looked at the information in front of him. Without high-energy isotopes, the places where they live are as crowded as insect nests. The individual's strength is so low that it can be called fragile, and the method of imparting knowledge is backward and outdated. There are no outstanding individuals, nor high-end combat power. Both the overall combat strength and the individual combat strength are not worth mentioning. After reading the entire document, the interior minister made a conclusion: the Earthlings are just a group of simple bugs, which can be easily crushed to death. Let the pirates on the edge of the galaxy attack, and we only need to shoot a small number of elite Skrull warriors to dominate the entire situation. The Interior Minister agreed with the idea of the previous commander of the guards. After all, it takes a lot of resources to dispatch the Skrull army. Although hiring pirates also requires resources, it is simply a drop in the bucket compared to the consumption of the Skrull army. Using some independent resource planets between the Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way as a reward is enough to hire a group of Chitauri. This deal is still very cost-effective. The conclusion of the Interior Minister also aroused a wave of approval from the Skrull high level. They all believed that the Earth could definitely be captured easily. After all, from all aspects, they are just a group of bugs. A bunch of bugs, haha. This is exactly what Fifan Long did when he sent intelligence to the Skrull Empire. He did not lie about the information on the Earth. But Fifan Long chose to hide some of the information. Or he only told part of the truth. In the information, he mentioned the basic operating form of human beings, including eating, drinking, and resting. Most adults cannot lift more than 80 kilograms. The fastest runner in the world only runs 100 meters in more than 9 seconds. Moreover, the civilization is divided into many small countries, each of which is independent and constantly attacks each other. In the eyes of the Skrulls, this form of civilization is barbaric and rude, and there is no efficiency at all. At the same time, they live without dignity. You should know that there are only about 40,000 Skrulls living on Alpha Star in the Royal City. And if the entire Skrull civilization, including various colonized planets, is counted, the Skrulls cannot even make up 7 billion in population. To be precise, the Skrulls have a population of less than 200 million, 185 million, which is the peak data of the Skrulls. The simple reproduction and random breeding of Earthlings is too barbaric to the Skrulls, just like primitive animals. The Skrulls cannot reproduce in this way. It takes a lot of resources to train a qualified Skrull. The Empire needs to control the population, otherwise the Empire's resources will be tight. For the Skrulls, Earthlings are simply a kind of pure wild creatures. It's probably the same as Earthlings understand free-range chickens, ducks, cows and sheep. In various aspects, Fifan Long's information is very detailed and very explanatory. But he missed a lot of key content. For example, Fifan Long only mentioned ordinary Earthlings, but ignored some of the most important things. Because in addition to ordinary Earthlings, there are some non-ordinary Earthlings. For example, mutants with X genes. Although an Omega-level mutant cannot be said to be a single starburst, it is not a problem to cause planetary disasters. For example, Iceman Poppy, if he performs in his prime, he can make the Earth enter the Ice Age. And in the vacuum environment of the universe, it can even create a large area of absolute zero. This is definitely a terrifying ability. For example, the most terrifying time bomb on Earth. As the host of the Cosmic Phoenix, Jean Grey is the most powerful bomb on Earth. If the Phoenix Force goes out of control, she can destroy the entire Earth, or the entire Skrull civilization, in an instant. Because the Phoenix Force itself is the original force of this universe, it is both life and death. Excluding the unstable Jean Grey, even the second-level Magneto and Professor X are quite terrifying. Magneto's ability is not to control a metal, but to control magnetism. The growth of age has not weakened his ability but made it stronger. He now has a meticulous control over magnetism. If he is given a stable energy source to provide him with enough energy, then he can reverse the magnetic field of the planet and directly destroy the vitality of a planet. If Professor X really wants to kill, as long as he is willing to start the brainwave instrument, then the mental storm he has set off can be enough to destroy the aliens in the alien fleet and burn their brains into idiots. And this is just the mutants. Extraordinary Dragon also conceals, or Extraordinary Dragon does not know more and deeper secrets hidden in the Earth. For example, the mysterious Kunlun, Daniel is known as the weakest Iron Fist in history. By the way, the second weakest Iron Fist in history is Daniel's father, but this does not mean that Kunlun is weak. The strongest Iron Fist in Kunlun's history was Wu Mifang 1,500 years ago. She once smashed the phoenix that passed by the Earth and destroyed the Earth. Note 1, although she paid the price of her life, Wu Mifang beat the phoenix that had never been defeated into Nirvana. And this rebirth from the ashes took the phoenix 1,500 years. This is also the reason why the phoenix lives in Jean Grey's body. Because it needs a shelter before it is reborn from Nirvana. Maybe Kunlun can't cultivate a second Wu Mifang. After all, the emergence of such a strong man is more often based on chance. If it weren't for the limitation that the human body cannot survive in the universe, maybe Wu Mifeng could have become famous in the universe earlier. Note 2. Anyway, Thanos, who is now known as the Overlord of Destruction, is not capable of winning a single fight with a phoenix unless he wears a glove with 6 infinite gems. Kunlun can't cultivate a second Wu Mifeng, but it can mass-produce Daniel. Although others don't have the power of the dragon. There are also mages who have been passed down in Kamar Teki. Maybe there are only a few mages like Lan who can play space-level magic. But there are hundreds of ordinary mages. There was also a passage connected to hell before the earth, in the story of the Oriental Hand and Society, and there are a large number of ghost riders. There is also an artifact of the great snake Jomungandr under the ice cap of the Arctic. This gentleman once triggered the first war of the gods and caused countless gods to fall. There are also various other terrible forces on the earth. For example, a terrible Blame King and the Solar System Defense Circle plan that the Blame organization he led is preparing. And the defense circle he set up against the Chitauri. The defense against the Chitauri has never stopped under the deliberate arrangement of a certain Blame King. As the Skrulls said, the living conditions on the earth are extremely bad, and it can be said to be a place with poor mountains and bad waters. Generally speaking, the Skrulls don't want such a place even if it is given to them for free. Because it takes a lot of resources to transform a planet. Compared with the comfortable and easy life of tens of thousands of people living on a planet, the Skrulls, who have a large living space and a wealth of personal resources that are so abundant that they can be controlled and controlled, the Earthlings are really not as good as the pets raised by the Skrulls. Even Tony Stark, as one of the world's top rich people, may not be able to live better than an ordinary Skrull civilian in terms of living environment. But if the Skrulls have read the literature of the Earth, especially some literary classics from the East, they will know a sentence: there are many unruly people in poor mountains and bad waters, bandits, bullies, desperados, lunatics, etc. In short, it is best for city people not to come. Compared with the Earthlings, the Skrulls are city people, while the Earthlings are the unruly people in the poor mountains and bad waters. Because the only property of this group of unruly people is a big dung egg. When you have countless property, you may not care too much if you lose some. But when you are so poor that you can only live on a dung egg, anyone who wants to steal this dung egg must be prepared to fight with others. Because you will face a madman who is so poor that he has nothing left. And the Skrulls obviously did not realize this. The Internal Affairs officer set the tone of the meeting in accordance with the thoughts of the 7th Emperor. It is no big deal for the Skrulls to crush a stink bug. But all the Skrulls did not realize that the Earth is actually more dangerous than they thought. There is a saying on Earth that if you don't commit suicide, you won't die. In fact, the Skrulls don't understand it. Maybe for the Skrulls, the Hell copy has just opened. P.S. Note 1: Wu Mifeng is a character in the official history of Marvel. It is not my fabrication that she once smashed the Phoenix. Note 2: just like in Dragon Ball, even the strong Saiyans cannot survive in the vacuum of the universe, so strong strength does not mean that you can survive in the universe. For example, Frieza, who is weaker than Son Goku, can survive in the universe. But Son Goku, who has transformed into a Super Saiyan, will die if he does not enter the spaceship. Additionally, Thanos cannot survive alone in the universe without his armor. Chapter 684, The Traces of the Stranger. Daisy Johnson felt like she was unlucky. Because after the power of the waste factory exploded, she felt that things were beyond her control. First, the Nightwalker suddenly appeared and sealed himself up with a special ability. The completely dark black area made the shock waves she emitted unable to penetrate at all, although she did want to stop at the beginning. Because Professor Eric and Gwen might be accidentally injured by her. But later she found that something was wrong, because she seemed to be caught by the Nightwalker. She didn't know what the Nightwalker wanted to do. But in any way, Daisy didn't want to be caught. Because she had a lot of secrets in her mind, many of which could not be easily told to others. Regardless of whether the Nightwalker had malicious intentions or not, as long as he showed a tendency to want to find out her thoughts or investigate her, Daisy would not choose to cooperate. But she underestimated the Nightwalker a little. Leiji didn't need to beat around the bush to deal with this kind of thing, because there was Professor Charles. There were very few people in the world who could keep their inner secrets in front of him. Obviously, Daisy Johnson was not one of those few people, so no matter how well she protected her mind, it was still stripped of its layers of armor. Many things began to appear in front of Professor Charles. 17 years ago. The dim streets, the dim lights, flickering from time to time. It was as if the voltage was unstable and ready to trip at any time. The young girl was looking for something in the alley. She was cautious, like a hamster. She pricked up her ears and listened carefully to the slightest movement around her. As long as there was anything abnormal around her, she would immediately find a place to hide. Even her movements were very similar to hamsters. And in this cautious progress, she found her destination in the alley. The window vent of a warehouse half-deep underground. The vent was very small, so small that it could only accommodate children of her age. Maybe this is why she chose to enter the warehouse here? Because no one would find out. A warehouse that is only opened a few times a month is a good shelter for the little girl. It allows her to have a place to stay. But today, when she entered the warehouse, the girl smelled an unusual smell. As a little girl who is as careful as a hamster, any strange smell is dangerous to her. She wanted to leave here immediately, but when the girl turned back and was about to leave, the ventilation duct she had entered had been sealed. It's really not easy to find you. The lights in the warehouse were turned on, illuminating the originally dark warehouse. A one-eyed black man with an eye mask stood in front of the girl. He tried to smile. But that smile was not a symbol of friendliness in the eyes of the little girl. It was more like a wolf's malicious smile to its prey. Well, Nick swears to God, this is his most sincere smile. It is harder to make him smile brightly than to kill him. The little girl wanted to escape, but how could she escape Nick who had been waiting for her? The other party is the top agent of SYNOPSIS. His ability is not comparable to that of a little girl. The little girl was finally caught by Nick, but there was no expression on her stubborn face. She just stared coldly at Nick Fury, as if he was a hateful child trafficker. Child, don't look at me like that. I'm not a bad person. Nick smiled bitterly. You kidnapped a 7-year-old girl, and you tell me you're not a bad person. The little girl spoke very logically, with a maturity that didn't belong to her age. If you let me go now, I can promise not to call the police. You look easy to recognize, and I can easily complete your face puzzle at a police station. The whole United States will want you. Nick Fury frowned when he heard this, and he felt sick as if he had eaten a fly. Child, I told you, I'm not a bad person. I spent a lot of effort to find you. Since you are so smart, you should know why I'm looking for you. Nick grabbed the girl's arm and said, I don't know. The girl stubbornly tried to break free from Nick's control. But Nick held her tightly. Okay, then let me tell you. Because of your father, Dr. Hyde. I think you should know why. He is now our most wanted criminal. His experiments turned him into a terrible monster. He used to be an excellent scientist, but now he has become a monster. Nick's statement that the little girl's father was a monster obviously caused her dissatisfaction. She glared at Nick Fury fiercely. Whether you like it or not, child, I have to take you away before your father finds you. He can't control himself now, and he is likely to hurt you. You need better discipline. Daisy, don't look at me like that. I know your name. Little Daisy still stared at Nick fiercely. Nick Fury was a little helpless. Taking care of children and coaxing children were not his strong points. He could only tell Daisy the truth. I am an agent of SYNOPSIS. If you have heard of our name from your father before, he used to work for us. We are now obligated to take care of you when you lose your guardian. You'd better go back with me obediently now. You can't wander outside anymore. It's not good for you. You need to receive an education. Nick felt that he had said enough. If it weren't for the fact that he was directly responsible for Dr. Hyde's affairs, he really didn't want to spend so much time on such things. He was going to take little Daisy away directly. But just when he was about to forcibly take Daisy away, Daisy suddenly said, Don't worry about me. They will come to pick me up. Nick was stunned by Daisy's words. What do you mean by them? What are you talking about? Who are they referring to? Nick had a bad premonition. He felt that things seemed to be out of his control. When Nick Fury questioned Daisy, he accidentally used a little force with his hand. This pinched Daisy a little and hurt her. Daisy seemed to be stimulated by something. Her little face wrinkled like a bun, and then a slight shock wave came out of her body, which shook Nick's hand away. Nick looked at Daisy in surprise. Are you a mutant? Daisy raised her head proudly. No. I'm not a mutant. Damn, did Hyde also inject you with his experimental serum? Nick doubted the source of Daisy's ability. This is innate to me. Daisy was still proud. I was born different. I am the same as them. They will come to take me away. I don't belong here. Nick was a little confused. This was the second time he heard the word they. Who did they represent? Maybe I can answer your confusion, Mr. Nick Fury, the acting director of SYNOPSIS. An electronically synthesized voice appeared behind Nick Fury. Nick Fury immediately turned around alertly, took out a pistol from his arms and entered a state of alert. He turned around and saw a sturdy man standing behind him. He looked very young, only in his 20s. He was wearing a black jumpsuit and had a very special device on his throat. His voice seemed to be emitted through this device. The young man saw the direction Nick was paying attention to, pointed to the sound device on his throat, and said in his electronic synthesizer voice, "I'm sorry, for some reason I can't speak casually. Unless I don't mind completely destroying the earth." Nick didn't care what he used to make the sound. He cared more about who the other party was and what he came for. "Well, sir. If you are so polite, you must not mind telling me your name and your purpose. Why do you want to take Daisy away? From a legal point of view, I am her guardian now." Although Nick Fury spoke politely, his gun was pointed at the other party. He didn't really trust the other party. The young man spread his hands to show that he had no ill intentions. "If you want to ask my name is Blackguard. But more people call me Black Bolt. As for who I am the king of the Inhumans." The young Black Bolt looked at Nick with a smile. "P.S. I made some adaptations to the story of Daisy, also known as Sky. Because I don't plan to insert the plot of the TV series Agents of SHIELD, I intercepted some settings of the comics and TV series, and then readapted them all, so that the story can go on more smoothly. Again, this book is the parallel universe of Apple, the starting point of Marvel." Chapter 685, New York City was almost destroyed by the hiccups. You know what? I really like cheeseburgers on Earth. Paired with high-calorie carbonated drinks, it's probably the most enjoyable food for me. You can't eat these in Adeline. Because these foods are very unhealthy, my wife usually doesn't let me eat them. The young man named Blackguard, Black Bolt, sat opposite Nick Fury and ate a cheeseburger while speaking in his own electronic synthesized voice. He ate a little too much, and the cheddar cheese and onion rings in the burger stuck to the corners of his mouth. But Black Bolt didn't care. He scraped it with his thumb and stuffed it into his mouth. This image made it difficult for Nick Fury to believe that the other party was a so-called king of the Inhumans. In the brightly lit warehouse, Blackguard took out the second burger from the brown paper tape and started eating it. Little Daisy sat not far away, eating her own burger and Coke. Now that the adults were talking, she just had to listen, and it was best not to interrupt at this time. She still understood this basic principle. She was much more mature than children of the same age. Nick didn't eat the burger, he just held the cup of coffee that the delivery guy had just delivered with a burger. Nick took a sip, black coffee without sugar or milk, Nick Fury's personal taste. "Since we are sitting down now, and I didn't point a gun at you, and even invited you to dinner, then I think I have shown enough sincerity. Now can you tell me what's going on?" Nick pointed at little Daisy not far away while holding the coffee. "What is an Inhuman? What is Adeline? What is Black Bolt? Why did you take Daisy away?" Nick had a lot of questions to ask. Blackguard ate the second burger in 2 or 3 bites, and after taking a big sip of Coke, he looked very strange. It seemed that he was holding back something, and even Nick felt that Blackguard's face turned blue. This is not a good sign. If the burger and Coke kill people, Nick Fury is going to close down Burger King tomorrow. Blackguard had been trying to hold back his burps, and it took him nearly 2 minutes to recover. Then he took a deep breath. Nick asked him in confusion, "What happened to you just now?" Blackguard used his electronic synthesizer to make a sound. "Nothing, it's just that a carbonated drink made me want to burp. I think you should understand the feeling of carbon dioxide expanding in the stomach." Blackguard's explanation made Nick more and more confused. "So you are holding back your burps? To be honest, judging by the way you ate the hamburger just now, I thought you didn't care that burping would ruin your image." "I really don't care much when my wife is gone," Blackguard said seriously, although the electronic sound from the electronic synthesizer was still without any fluctuations and emotions. "But for the safety of New York City, I still have to hold it back." "Huh?" Nick frowned. Seeing Nick's puzzled look, Blackguard felt that he needed to cover up. He motioned Nick to see clearly what he was going to do next. Black Bolt opened his mouth and pronounced, "A," at a volume so light that it was almost completely inaudible. As he pronounced, a rich energy gathered from his body. Then it roared out from his mouth, and with a sound he made as a carrier, It slammed hard into the solid concrete floor of the warehouse. The rock-hard ground was like a piece of tofu that had been scooped out with a spoon, and a huge broken gap appeared in front of Nick's eyes. Nick Fury felt his hair stand on end. He stood up suddenly, then pointed at Black Bolt with trembling fingers, and couldn't say a word. Black Bolt Blackguard seemed to have expected this situation, and he said in his own electronic synthesized voice, "This is why I can't burp. If I couldn't help burping because of the flatulence of carbonated drinks just now, we would only be standing on the ruins of New York City and chatting now. Thank God, New York City was not destroyed by a burp." Nick Fury snatched the unfinished Coke from Black Bolt and poured it out. He stared at Black Bolt with his only remaining eye. "I think it makes sense that your wife doesn't let you drink Coke." Nick swore that Black Bolt was the most powerful talker he had ever seen. This was a real talker, and it was a strategic level weapon. Black Bolt smiled and waved his hand. "Let's talk about business. What are the Inhumans? We are essentially humans, but a small branch appeared in the process of evolution. Let us have such special abilities." Nick looked at the broken ground. "Like mutants?" "No, completely different from mutants. The abilities of the Inhumans are controllable, not disordered. There is no possibility of an explosion of superpowers to harm others. In fact, the origin of the Inhumans stems from an experiment of an advanced alien civilization. In the distant era of the new Homo sapiens, an advanced alien civilization passed by the Earth. They conducted an irresponsible experiment on the neo Homo sapiens. Because the X gene hidden in the neo Homo sapiens on Earth, that is, the mutant gene, aroused their interest. They used the laboratory to restore part of the mutation of the X gene and implanted it into the bodies of the neo Homo sapiens. And this irresponsible experiment made the Inhumans miserable at first, because this experiment had many flaws. In the end, the Inhumans spent tens of thousands of years to perfect everything about the Inhumans. And this is the origin of us Inhumans." Black Bolt spoke openly to Nick Fury about these things that should have been very secret. Nick was a little uncertain. "So, the Inhumans are aliens?" No. 99% of our genes are from Earth. Only 1% are mutant genes of the Inhumans. Just like the X gene only occupies 1% of mutants. We are still Earthlings in essence. Black Bolt corrected Nick's concept. "And Adelan is our capital. A floating city. We built it in space. We once landed on the moon for a period of time. We also once cruised on the satellite belt of Saturn. The technology of the Inhumans is much more advanced than that of the Earth. To be precise, the current Earth civilization is actually the second civilization on Earth. The first civilization on Earth that was contemporary with the Inhumans has long been destroyed." Nick's mouth opened a little. If what Black Bolt said was true, then the information he heard today might be a shock to the entire Earth civilization. "Don't look at me like that. To me, Earthlings are my compatriots. Many Earthlings still have Inhuman genes in their bodies. When we find these compatriots, we will take them to Adelan." Black Bolt Blackguard pointed at little Daisy. "For example, Adelan has a place dedicated to absorbing new people. You can think of Adelan as another country on Earth, but we don't establish diplomatic relations with any other country, and don't interact with them. We close the country and play by ourselves." Black Bolt smiled. He thought he made a good joke. But Nick had a stern face, because he thought about a profound question. "So, what is the purpose of you telling me all this today? Since you know my identity as S.H.I.E.L.D., I think you also understand what S.H.I.E.L.D. does. I don't think it's a wise act to expose yourself to an organization that doesn't know whether it is good or evil." Nick had a cold face. Although he thought Black Bolt's performance was a bit silly, if he was really the king of the Inhumans, his IQ would not be as low as he showed. Black Bolt smiled and said in an electronic synthesized voice, "It's very simple, because mutants." Chapter 686 Revised Plan. Because of mutants. Black Bolt emphasized what he said, and in order to emphasize this point, he turned up the volume of his electronic synthesizer. "What?" Nick didn't know what this had to do with mutants, so he was still a little confused. Black Bolt continued to explain, although the Inhumans are essentially derived from mutants, the genes of the Inhumans began to evolve continuously in the process of our reproduction. Let me give you a most basic analogy. With humans on Earth as the original carrier, humans themselves are the original point of all evolution. Mutants are version 2.0 of humans trying to evolve one step forward. However, this version 2.0 is not stable. Black Bolt Blackguard shook his head. "It's just like the Windows 98 operating system released a few years ago. It is not stable. At the global demonstration conference of Bill Gates, this system directly crashed with a blue screen. And mutants are similar to this Windows 98 system, which is a step further than the previous operating system, but not necessarily that good. And the Inhumans are more like Windows XP, which was just released this year, and are more stable. Although the system is not necessarily the best, it is the most user-friendly. Perhaps it can stand firm for 20 years in the ever-changing digital trend. Black Bolt waved his hand. This is the huge difference between mutants and Inhumans. But Black Bolt raised a finger. It's just like the bottleneck that computer hardware will encounter when the system is upgraded. Every system upgrade represents an iteration of hardware. The stronger the operating system, the stronger the hardware. And the birth of Inhumans requires a catalyst. This catalyst is called Terrigen Mist, and I keep it. Director Nick, you can understand this catalyst as the iteration of hardware. And hardware iteration has a price. Have you ever assembled a computer? Black Bolt looked into Nick's eyes and said, computer hardware updates may cause incompatibility, causing the computer to become useless waste. The catalytic update of the Terrigen Mist to the Inhumans is like replacing many important components in the computer. For Inhumans, it is a normal update, but for mutants, this iteration will completely kill them. Because the hardware in their bodies is not compatible with the updated new hardware, nor does it support new software. 2.0 cannot be upgraded to 3.0. Black Bolt Blackguard said in a cold tone, I've heard of a saying that some mutants think that their evolutionary direction is the future of mankind. Haha. In fact, they don't know that they should have been eliminated tens of thousands of years ago. And this is why I want to see you, Director Nick. In fact, if I want, I can release Terrigen Mist all over the world. With the climate conditions on Earth, I only need to release it in South America, and then within 3 months, Terrigen Mist will be all over the world. Black Bolt finally got to the point. But do you want me to release Terrigen Mist like this? No. Nick refused without even thinking about it. Because there are too many things involved. Yes, I don't want to either. Because Terrigen Mist is harmless to ordinary people on Earth who have not awakened the X gene. But once the X gene awakens, Terrigen Mist will instantly kill mutants. Black Bolt found a box in the warehouse and sat on it. The genes in ordinary people on Earth have a fork in the evolution process, one leading to mutants and the other leading to Inhumans. The probability of each is 50-50. Everyone has the X gene, it's just dominant or recessive. Awakening either becomes a mutant or an Inhuman. If I release the Terrigen Mist, it will be no less than releasing biological weapons in all countries on Earth, and hundreds of millions of people will die. And this is not what I expect to see. I am the king of the Inhumans, but I am not an executioner. I don't want my hands to be stained with the blood of my compatriots. That's why I am sitting here chatting with you today. I have taken over the power of the Inhumans, so I want to change some of the original traditions of the Inhumans. Nick has slowly understood Black Bolt's ideas, so he said, for example, cooperate with ordinary people on Earth to help me find my people better. We are not enemies, Nick Fury. So are you interested in becoming an Inhuman partner on Earth? At least you can see what I do. Black Bolt Blackguard's last words convinced Nick Fury. So, are you willing to cooperate with me? For the basic peace of the entire human world. Blackguard stretched out his hand, waiting for Nick Fury to shake hands with him. Little Daisy did not leave the Earth with Black Bolt in the end and go to Attilan, the legendary home of the Inhumans in the universe. Instead, she was adopted by Nick Fury. She hid her identity as an Inhuman and became Nick's adopted daughter as a simple human girl. In fact, not many people know about this. Daisy was secretly trained by Nick since she was a child and became a top agent. And her identity is also highly confidential. I am afraid that only Nick himself knows about this in the entire SHIELD. It can be said that Daisy is Nick Fury's most important confidant. For Nick Fury, because of his trust in Daisy, he can entrust some special and important tasks to her. For example, follow Professor Eric in London, observe him and protect him. Of course, the most important thing is to pay close attention to his research. He is looking for the God particle. Professor Eric found the God particle this time, but he did not have the opportunity to study it well. Because Loki took it directly back to Asgard. And because of the problem with the Reality Stone, Daisy's identity was exposed to the Illuminati this time. At the same time, the secrets in her mind were also revealed to the professor. about some confidential things. Of course the most important thing is about the Inhumans, and the Terrigen mist in her mind. Professor, what hairstyles are there? When Professor Charles exited the mind mode, Li Ji was sitting on the side waiting for Professor Charles to share the information he got. But Professor Charles looked a little tired, and his face didn't look very good. Professor Charles stared at Li Ji for a while, making Li Ji a little uncomfortable, and then said, regarding the Solar System Defense Circle plan, I think you and Tony Stark need to make some revisions. Li Ji, why? Charles pointed to the sky, because there is a group of prehistoric survivors of the Earth floating in the solar system, and their city is called Attilan. My suggestion is that maybe you need to deal with them first. Chapter 687. Let's deal with the cosmic cube. When Daisy woke up from her deep sleep, she didn't know that everything in her mind had been discovered. When she woke up, she was lying on the bed in her room. Daisy felt as if something had happened, but it seemed that nothing had happened. She had a headache, but she couldn't remember the details of most things. As for the treatment of Daisy, Li Ji and Professor Charles did not intend to intervene. Because from her memory, she had various relationships with S.H.I.E.L.D. and was considered one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And she was also Nick Fury's adopted daughter. So as to how to deal with Daisy specifically, they handed the information to Captain Rogers and let him deal with it himself. Whether to recall her or let her stay in London, England depends on what Captain Rogers thinks. However, Daisy's previous mission, the mission to explore the God Particle, Reality Stone, was considered a failure. Because now the Reality Stone has been taken away by Loki. Li Ji knows one thing, that is, there is a space stone, the Cosmic Cube, in the collection of S.H.I.E.L.D. It was discovered by Hydra during World War II, and Red Skull Schmidt also used this gem to make a lot of weapons. In the end, it was brought back to S.H.I.E.L.D. by Captain Rogers. It became S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secret collection. Humans have too little utilization of the Infinity Stones. Nick wanted to use the Infinity Stones to develop weapons, just like Red Skull. But the difference is that Nick wants to make weapons to protect the Earth, while Schmidt wants to make weapons to rule the Earth. Although the function is the same, the starting point is different. It may not be a good thing for the people on Earth to keep such a powerful gem on the small Earth. In fact, there are many people who secretly spy on this gem. For example, Loki, who is far away in Asgard, needs more power. Odin falling asleep is not beyond her expectation. In fact, many clues can reveal that Odin is about to fall into a dormant state. For example, he is eager for Thor to lift Thor's hammer. At the same time, he originally wanted to force Thor to be crowned at Loki's triumphal ceremony, and appointed Sif as Thor's fiancée, although Loki did a lot of work in this, and so on. Odin seemed to be a little too hasty, which was not like the style of a king who had ruled the realm of gods for thousands of years. Although many things were not stated, Loki had already thought of what might happen to Odin, about his impending hibernation. And this was the opportunity Loki was waiting for. She needed to take power at this time. The previous war had proved her strength. And later, Thor's deliberate concession gave her a step to ascend to the throne. Odin could not crown Thor, because even if he forced Thor to be crowned, with the temperament that Thor showed in front of all the subjects of Asgard at that time, everyone would oppose Odin's behavior. Even Odin could not choose an inappropriate heir regardless of the opposition of other gods in Asgard. So when Odin knew that he was about to fall into deep sleep, he had to choose to entrust Asgard to Loki to manage. Because from Loki's performance, she was the most suitable person. And Odin's wife, the Phantom Queen Frigga, became Odin's guardian under Loki's persuasion. Make sure that Odin will not be harmed by others in a dormant state. And now Loki finally has power in Asgard, although it is only temporary. But she can do a lot of things. For example, what her biological father, the frost giant Laufey, said, get the infinite gems and kill the sealed snake cull. Prevent the possible Ragnarok. Loki, wearing the infinite gloves, has a dazzling red gem inlaid on her gloves. That is the infinite gem. And this is just the first one. She needs to get at least 3 infinite gems to be sure to kill Kull. Because Kull wants to destroy Asgard, and for Loki, Asgard has many precious things. Maybe it will cost a little, but Loki thinks it's all worth it. And just when Loki was thinking about the other Infinity Stones, Li Ji also contacted Captain Rogers. Regarding the issue of the space cube, he felt that it was best not to keep this thing in the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. The fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. last time showed how unreliable the internal protection system of S.H.I.E.L.D. was. If this thing is left in S.H.I.E.L.D., Who knows if someone will come to steal it one day. Li Ji couldn't tell whether Loki would suddenly develop an addiction to collecting gems, and then come to S.H.I.E.L.D. to steal a gem or something. If this is true, then things will become even more troublesome. The Cosmic Cube? Well, I know this thing. Schmidt and I fought for it. S.H.I.E.L.D. has a high degree of confidentiality about this thing. In fact, the main task of the Avengers is to guard the Cosmic Cube and prevent it from being stolen by anyone. Captain Rogers talked about the level of protection of the Cosmic Cube. We are on duty 24 hours a day, and there are at least 1 or 2 Avengers on duty in each shift. And after Nick was arrested, he'll stop making weapons with the Cosmic Cube. Li Ji touched his chin, because there is no money, right? Captain Rogers nodded, partly, but the other part is that she and I don't think it is a good idea to use the Cosmic Cube to make weapons. The energy it leaks is like lighting a bonfire in a dark forest. In fact, I think it makes sense that you compare the leaked energy in London this time with the Cosmic Cube. Thank God you were at the scene and took the most correct measures at the first time. Otherwise, who knows how much harm this thing would cause. Li Ji scratched his head. In fact, the harm of the Reality Stone has already been done. The main victims are Peter and Gwen. Telepathy is a cool skill, but it would be terrible if it is communicated without limit. For example, Gwen was taking a bath in the bathroom, feeling the touch of warm water sliding across her skin. And Peter, who was sitting in the living room reading a book, had a similar feeling. Even as a man, he would have a secret female feeling. Or when Peter was dealing with some male privacy in the bedroom, Gwen, who was writing a research report, would suddenly feel the same as Peter. In short, this is very embarrassing. This skill still needs training, and the best way is to communicate with the mind only when it is needed. It feels terrible to communicate like this all the time. However, this also allows the scene of the 2 people unconsciously showing their affection to a new height. For example, in the kitchen, the 2 can pass the tools that the other party wants without talking. Li Ji thinks that as long as they really master this skill, the attack power of the 2 swords combined should be far greater than that of Yang Guo and Xia Longyu. My opinion is to give the Cosmic Cube to Master Gu Yi for safekeeping, which is safer. At least the Cosmic Cube is with Master Gu Yi, and no one dares to touch it. Li Ji came back to his senses and suggested. Captain Rogers shrugged, I don't care about this kind of thing, but he may not agree. Because this is the private property of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's why you have to use your personal charm to conquer her and make her agree to this. Li Ji patted Captain Rogers' strong trapezius muscle. Another thing, what do you think about the Inhumans? And Nick Fury? Li Ji mentioned the Inhumans. I have to find a way to go to the prison in Washington to talk to Nick. This matter may be a bit too much. If the Terrigen Mist really exists, then it is enough to trigger a war between mutants and Inhumans. And it is almost irreconcilable. This is a matter of survival. Captain Rogers emphasized this. And I think you and Tony should drive a space battleship to visit the Inhuman Kingdom. If they have other ideas, we'd better prepare early. A civilization that is free from the Earth. I really find it hard to believe that they are Earthlings. Captain Rogers was a little worried. Li Ji indicated that he understood the matter. Yes, but we need to wait until Tony finishes his wedding. It's not easy to find the Inhumans at Ilan. Another thing I'm more concerned about is whether the railway in Eastern Europe is being built smoothly. It's been several months now, and Dr. Banner has sent back little information recently. Li Ji mentioned Bruce Banner. Rogers smiled. In fact, perhaps the progress in Eastern Europe is faster than we thought. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 688, Pulling More People on the Chariot. Eastern Europe, Ukraine. As one of the largest countries split from the former Soviet Union, the relationship between Ukraine and Russia has always been delicate. Because in the Soviet era, the most important naval production departments of the former Soviet Union were almost all concentrated in Ukraine, while the Air Force production departments were concentrated in Russia. Under the system of national overall planning, there is nothing wrong with this national chess game allocation method. But when the Soviet Union disintegrated and the original CIS countries became independent one after another, the disadvantages of this became apparent. Ukraine is not only the most important naval equipment production area of the former Soviet Union, but also the largest granary in Eastern Europe. Ukraine has endless plains, fertile black soil suitable for farming, relatively abundant water resources, etc. The split Russia is relatively poor in this regard. Although Russia has a lot of undeveloped land, many of them are concentrated in Siberia or the border area with China. The reclamation of these areas is extremely difficult, especially in areas close to Siberia. Although food and vegetables can be grown, the cost is high. Only the planting momentum of staple food wheat and corn is relatively good, but fruits, vegetables, and various fresh green leafy vegetables are still in short supply. The Russian president, relying on the backing of using oil resources at all costs, has reclaimed Russia's own grain-producing areas and started to export wheat. But this does not mean that Russia is far away from the food crisis, because the current decline in oil prices has made Russia, which relies on oil as its main exporter and foreign exchange, seem a little uneasy. Although the first batch of helium-3 will arrive at the end of the year, as one of the 5 permanent members of the UN, Russia also has its own share. But for various reasons, Russia's technology in nuclear power plant projects is not advanced. The United States has a large arc reactor provided by Tony Stark, which is expensive but has a high energy conversion rate. However, the threshold of this technology is too high, and ordinary people can't play it at all. The United States also does not intend to transfer any arc reactor technology to other countries. This technology can be unique to Tony. He can sell finished arc batteries, but he cannot sell complete sets of reactors and related technologies. The new European Union, jointly formed by Britain, France and Germany in Western Europe, is obviously going to leave other countries in the EU behind and prepare to go it alone. Because there are too many troublemakers in the EU. For example, Greece and the like will only drag their feet. In the middle of the year, China successfully ignited Surin No. 1, becoming the second country after the United States to master controlled nuclear fusion. Although it adopts the path of traditional large-scale nuclear power plants, it requires a huge infrastructure work to lay the foundation for the new nuclear power plant. In terms of efficiency, it is not as efficient as the arc reactor, and even requires the country as a whole to issue a unified national plan order. It is like mobilizing the whole country like a war, including all kinds of materials and talents need to be concentrated to complete this huge plan. What's more, it is heard that China directly relocated a small city with a population of 600,000. A new city was built 60 kilometers away from the original county town. The old county town was also rebuilt with a drastic move, and the first controlled nuclear fusion nuclear power plant will be built in this city. In order to build the first large-scale controlled nuclear fusion nuclear power plant using helium-3 as raw material, it is not an exaggeration for China to say that it is now doing this with the strength of the whole country. And the cost of doing so may be worth it in various aspects. Because of the existence of Mandarin in the Marvel world, China's western regions and several provinces in the southwest and northwest have never been safe. The Western Development Plan set up by the state has also become a piece of waste paper. After all, no one will do business and build factories in unsafe places. In the Marvel world, the development level of Western China is more than 30 years behind that of the southeast coast. Because of the Battle of New York, the first cooperation between SHIELD and SHIELD included the alliance with Latveria. The Ten Rings Gang, which had been a disaster in the western region for decades, was finally wiped out in one go. Although a lot of costs were paid in the battle, it was worth it in the long run. A peaceful and stable western region is extremely important to the country. The originally shelved Western Development Plan was once again put on the table. The most important thing in the development of the West is to solve the problems of infrastructure and energy supply in the West. Because of the existence of the Mandarin in the Marvel universe, Western China has been in a state of suspension for a long time. Construction in all aspects is extremely backward. Even the number of the Western Region Reclamation Corps is several times higher than that of Li Ji in his previous life. And the Reclamation Corps has maintained a strong combat capability until now, in order to prevent possible rebellions by the Ten Rings Gang. Millions of reclamation troops were stationed in various regions of northwest and southwest China as half soldiers and half civilians. At the same time, the poverty level in Western China in the Marvel world was much more terrible than that in Li Ji's previous life. After all, you can't expect people in a place that may be attacked by the Ten Rings at any time to be in the mood to develop the economy. Anyone with a little ability would find a way to go to the cities in the central or eastern parts of China. Large tracts of land in the west are still undeveloped virgin land in this world. China's top leaders decided to set up the first large-scale controlled nuclear fusion nuclear power plant, Skyfire No. 1, in the central and western parts of China. This large-scale nuclear power plant now brings together various factories across the country, including local infrastructure personnel, and various designers from Beijing, Shanghai and Guangzhou, with a total number of more than 350,000 people involved in various tasks. China has not carried out such a national project for a long time, because the importance of new energy to the country does not need to be explained. The first phase of Skyfire No. 1 requires the first ignition to be completed at the beginning of next year, and the first phase of the project can start running at 50% load before April next year. Everyone is working around the clock, and the infrastructure construction site is working around the clock. In order to ensure the highest efficiency, 6 shifts are adopted. Each shift is a continuous high-intensity work of 4 hours without a break. Don't think that this behavior is too much, or think that the leader is crazy or something. Because after Shyano No. 1 is truly fully loaded, this nuclear power plant can provide 55% of the electricity resources needed by China today. Although it is still the first phase of the project, and the entire project is divided into 6 phases. But the effect of this giant nuclear power plant is already foreseeable. The most important thing is that when the lunar helium-3 can be mined on a large scale, after calculation, only the initial investment is needed, then in 20 years, the energy savings alone can make the entire construction pay for itself. And this has not yet calculated the value created after the energy is put into production. So is it worth it to do all this now? Worth it. The arc reactor is very advanced, but it is not suitable for China. Because the way the arc makes energy and transmits energy is different, a key step is required when energy is converted into electricity. And the step Tony Stark will not announce. Using the arc requires an unprecedented transformation of the national power grid. If the old power grid is transformed, then it is cost-effective. However, China's power grid, especially many high-voltage and ultra-high-voltage power grids, were built only in the past decade. It is completely different from the power grid in the United States, which has been in use for more than 30 or even 40 years and is on the verge of replacement and transformation. It is very cost-effective for the United States to use the arc, but it may not be the case for China. In fact, the Skyfire No. 1 project has attracted the attention of many countries around the world since its construction. The United States is willing to provide arc energy to its allies, but it will not provide technology. And the US government has always paid $10, and if it cannot get back $20, then it will be considered a loss. This makes many people discouraged by the US government's arc plan. Many countries have set their sights on China. The traditional controlled nuclear fusion technology has a much lower technical threshold and cost than the arc. Although the investment in infrastructure is scary, the investment in infrastructure has never been a one-time investment, but can be seen in the long run. For example, Russia, the Russian president has spoken with Chinese leaders many times, hoping to cooperate in some way to build a nuclear power plant with controlled nuclear fusion. However, China's answer has always been a bit ambiguous. In order to make the Chinese government relent, the Russian president secretly sent his trusted prime minister to China to hold talks with Chinese leaders. BJ, Ninian Airport. In fact, this airport with a great reputation in Chinese history now rarely lands civilian aircraft. The few civilian aircraft that land here are also because they carry special big figures. For example, world-class rich people or something. Compared with the capital airport, the infrastructure of Ninian Airport is not good, and the facilities are also facing the problem of aging. But in BJ, it is still one of the most important airports. Because compared with the capital airport, Ninian Airport is closer to the city and the transportation is more convenient. At the same time, because there are almost no other civil aviation flights, landing here is more secretive. The special plane carrying the Russian Prime Minister slowly landed on the runway of Ninian Airport. Because it was not an official visit this time, there was no warm welcome ceremony. Only a few bulletproof red flag sedans and Mercedes-Benz Gs with black bodies and anti-peat films on all the windows were parked not far from the runway. I still don't like autumn in BJ. The air smells too much of sand, which makes my throat uncomfortable. The Russian Prime Minister said to the embassy staff who came to pick him up at the airport. Also, do you have any new information? Is the Chinese side still unwilling to give in? The Russian Prime Minister asked the person who had previously negotiated with China. The BJ side has a very tough attitude. They can help with the construction, but they will not use Russians from workers to designers, and after the nuclear power plant is built, all management and technical personnel must be hired by Chinese. The subsequent maintenance will also be carried out by China, and will be charged separately. The technology will not be transferred. They intend to use our money to practice technology and completely exclude us. The ambassador who was in charge of the negotiations before had a gloomy expression. And the installed capacity is limited. The installed capacity of nuclear power plants does not exceed 5,000 megawatts. This installed capacity does not make much sense. Building a traditional nuclear power plant can achieve this power generation. The Russian Prime Minister's expression was as gloomy as the negotiating ambassador's. Any other news? The negotiating ambassador touched his ears with his index finger and thumb. An uncertain news, it is rumored that someone saw Latvian people appear in BJ. But it has not been verified. But maybe we should be careful. Latvia is now building an Eastern European super railway and has built another spacecraft that can transport helium-3 between the Earth and the Moon. If Latvia and China reach some agreement, I am afraid that our Russian situation will become even more embarrassing. We are sandwiched between China on one side and the new Eastern European Union on the other. Especially since we have fought a war before, if things really reach the most intense time. The negotiating ambassador clapped his hands and said nothing more. But his clapping action has already told the Prime Minister the current situation. The Russian Prime Minister heaved a sigh of relief. Then no matter what the conditions, we must sign this treaty with China. Without controlled nuclear fusion technology, we will be nothing in the future. Chapter 689, The New Era Created by Li Ji. The appearance of Latvian and BJ is definitely not good news for Russia. In terms of the degree of isolation of Latvia, it is not an exaggeration to say that is a closed country. If it were not for the Ark spacecraft incident and the lunar mining of helium-3 incident that pushed Latvia to the forefront, no one in the world would pay attention to this small country of Latvia. No one would notice that this small country has a strong national strength that is completely incomparable to its territory. Russia has indeed suffered a loss from Latvia on the front battlefield. If Latvia is mixed up with China, it will undoubtedly be a major diplomatic disaster for Russia. The whole of Russia will be in a huge clamp. Both the left and right wings will be clamped. The decline in oil prices has begun to collapse Russia's dream of rising as a great power. If it cannot obtain the technology of controlled nuclear fusion, then the tough Russia will only be tough, and everything else will be deprived. This is unbearable for the Russian Prime Minister. Like the Russian President, he is looking forward to the day when Russia rises again, because Russia's top leader has witnessed the glory and decline of the Soviet Union. Including the nearly 3 decades since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's population has decreased by tens of millions. If this trend continues, Russians will eventually die out and the country will cease to exist. In order to continue Russian civilization, Russia's top leaders need to create a living environment that is at least acceptable for Russians. There should not be a large-scale unemployment wave, nor should a large number of unemployed people gather on the streets, let alone let the farmers on the border starve and then flee as refugees. As a leader, sometimes you need to bear more than ordinary people imagine, because their words and deeds, any action is related to the life and death of hundreds of millions of people. Under the huge power is a huge pressure, which is enough to crush ordinary people to pieces. So the Russian Prime Minister has made up his mind to sign a treaty on controlled nuclear fusion with China no matter what, even if the conditions are harsh and even if it costs a lot. And with controlled nuclear fusion as a prerequisite, Russia needs to revise a new strategic partnership with China. At least the new Eastern Europe seems to be an enemy rather than a friend at present. If China and Latvia form an alliance, Russia will be in a very difficult situation. To do all this, Russia must be quite aware. When the Russian Prime Minister and the President were communicating via an encrypted phone call, the President in Moscow fell silent. After a long time, he spoke. "Is this your judgment?" "Yes, this may be the last chance for Russia. I think everyone, all politicians and observers have noticed it. Our history has entered a new turning point. This rapid turn did not have any signs. It was as if it was forcibly pried open by someone. Our world is being pushed forward by an invisible big hand." The Russian Prime Minister frowned. "We can't stop even if we want to. There always seems to be a black hand behind the scenes. He doesn't allow us more time to think. The whole world, 7 billion people around the world seem to be moving along the same track. If we don't enter the fast lane of this historical turning point, we will eventually be crushed by history. Whether it's new energy, super fast railways, alien life, the Earth Federation, the new medical revolution, etc. All of these have emerged in a short period of 2 years. We don't have much time to think about it. This may no longer be a problem for Russia alone, but a problem for our entire nation. The leader in Moscow has many titles. Some people call him the Great or the Tsar. He used to be the youngest of the 5 permanent members. He took over the baton of power of the world power at the age of more than 40. Create a strong Russia in 20 years. This was his previous promise, but 20 years later, the situation in Russia is not as good as expected. Now the man called the Russian Tsar is over 60 years old and a real old man. The way he thinks about problems now is also very different from when he was young. First, he considered the political life of his important confidant. Do you know that if you really sign any agreement that sells out Russia's vested interests, you will most likely be nailed to the pillar of shame, or even be accused of being a traitor? I can't protect you then. The Prime Minister on the other end of the phone was silent, and the Tsar could only hear the panting sound coming from the phone. After a long while, the voice of the Prime Minister on the other end of the phone came over. Some things always have to be done. I believe that history will vindicate me, for Russia, for the Slavs. Across the phone, the Russian president could not pat the Prime Minister on the shoulder or give him a hug. He could only try to keep his tone calm and ask, "Do you need anything else?" "Hold on, I need you, Mr. President, to hold on. We will surely enter a new era of the universe." The Prime Minister's voice trembled a little. "In addition, protect my family." "I will." The man called the Tsar made his own promise, "As long as I am still in office." Prime Minister, then, for the country. President, for the country. A confidential negotiation, quarrels, doubts, and compromises. Everything is not enough to describe the hardship involved. A confidential contract was signed, which was an absolutely humiliating agreement for Russia. Many treaties were added, including the redetermination of the disputed Sino-Russian borderland. At the same time, it also included the construction of a new Siberian railway, which will be connected to Latvia in the new Eastern Europe, and the Western Railway that China planned to build in the Yili region of the Western region, one north and one west, to build 2 new international railway arteries. In order to get what it wanted, Russia paid a lot this time. But if you want something, you must pay something first. This is a truth. At the same time, the political life of the Russian Prime Minister came to an end because of the signing of the agreement. Even after returning home, he may need to face accusations from other senior party members, and the worst may be that he will have to spend many years in prison. As for why the Latvian people appeared in BJ? It's simple, because Li Ji and had a deep conversation during the last trip to Latvia. Regarding the super high-speed railway, we don't want it to be limited to Eastern Europe. Li Ji drank sparkling lemonade and chatted with about this topic. "I don't care about other countries." Didn't seem to be interested in what Li Ji said. Sometimes in politics and diplomacy, power is more important than strength, such as China and Russia. We have a lot of room for maneuver. The first phase of the goal is to include China in the super high-speed railway plan. Believe me, they will be interested. They can even provide loans. Li Ji drank a glass of lemonade in big gulps. Russia also has many problems. After all, they are not the Soviet Union. They don't have the ability to build an arc spacecraft or a controlled nuclear fusion reactor. And with the delicate relationship between Russia and the United States, even if the United States is willing to provide an arc reactor, I'm afraid Russia will not dare to use it. Their only target can only be China. And as long as we operate properly, we can use a lever to pry the 2 superpowers. As long as China, Russia and the 3 countries form a new alliance, the super high-speed railway will run through the largest East Asian continent, connecting the entire Eastern Europe, part of Western Europe and Central Asia. Then it will extend its tentacles to South Asia. As long as the general trend is established, no one can stop this rolling torrent. Looking at Li Ji's empty glass, suddenly grabbed the wine bottle beside him and poured Li Ji a full glass of wine. It was as if he was just drinking to his heart's content, not tasting the wine. You want to use the whole world as a chessboard? Countries as chess pieces? Where do you get your confidence from? There was some inexplicable excitement in Doom's tone. Doom was a man who always watched the excitement and did not mind getting involved. Do you know how many countries would oppose this? It might even trigger a new world war. Li Ji smiled slightly. Maybe, but when someone has the force to shut up all other countries in the world, what do you think of this plan? Doom was slightly startled, and then he seemed to suddenly understand something. He pointed at Li Ji with an indescribable excitement and said, "Ho ha ho ha. It's you. Well, if that's the case, I don't mind setting off a new storm in this dull world." Li Ji looked at the bright red wine in the glass. He didn't drink it, but slowly tilted the glass. The bright red wine stayed and splashed down the moat from the high-rise terrace of Doom's ruined castle, like a small bright red waterfall. Li Ji looked at the bright red wine and said softly, "Once the arrow leaves the bow, it will never turn back. The world is in a state of chaos and those who follow it will prosper, while those who go against it will perish. This time, we will create a new era with our own hands." Chapter 690 The Changed Person. Li Ji is behind the scenes pushing the world to change and speeding up the world's progress, because he firmly believes in the simplest belief, which is to create a better world. For this belief, he has done many things. Just like the conversation between the Russian Prime Minister and the President. This invisible hand pushes the whole world forward in an orderly manner. It is not by force or something similar. Instead, it relies on personal charm and belief. Li Ji unites a group of like-minded people, so that many heroes are willing to contribute to the cause of building a new era, relying on their outstanding abilities to add bricks and tiles to the new world. And this kind of promotion is profound, and it has also changed the lives of many people. For example, Kurno, a rural boy in Ukraine, if it weren't for the various plans promoted by Li Ji, maybe his life is still in a rural area in Ukraine, working hard in the orchard, and his family is working hard to fight poverty. Or enter the harsh military camp to receive various trainings, even including possible bullying. Or like his second brother, go to a big city like Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, to find a job that can barely survive. For example, his second brother worked as an apprentice in a bakery in Ukraine. The salary was low and the work was heavy. It was a very hard and meticulous job. If it weren't for learning various techniques for making bread and pastries, Kurno's second brother would have quit long ago. Kurno's second brother also told him about the recruitment of workers for the super high-speed railway. For this reason, he came to Kiev from the countryside and met Katyusha, a graduate of Kiev University, on the train. After layers of screening, because Kurno had a clean background and no bad habits, and also mastered some basic welding and mechanical maintenance knowledge, all learned from repairing agricultural machinery at home, Kurno was successfully selected by the new Eastern European High-Speed Railway Group and became a glorious railway worker. Because of the knowledge he mastered, Kurno did not have to become a basic worker who piled on the construction site for infrastructure. His assignment was to enter the maintenance class and start as a junior maintenance worker. This made Kurno's salary a little higher, although the work of the maintenance class was actually more cumbersome. But Kurno felt that he was not bad luck. Compared with his colleagues, Kurno has no bad habits, no alcohol or smoking, and he even started to read a lot. In his spare time at work, he began to read the former Soviet Union's famous work How the Steel Was Tempered. Because he still remembered what Katyusha said to him on the train. "I want to say like Paul Korkagin when I grow old, I have no regrets in my life." Kurno knew the book How the Steel Was Tempered, but he had never really read it. Now because of Katyusha, he began to read this world-famous book. Paul is a Ukrainian, and the story first took place in Kiev, which made Kurno feel very involved. Especially when he read to the end, Paul began to build the Trans-Siberian Railway, which made Kurno even more excited. Because he is also a road builder now, Paul can be a hero, so why can't he be a hero? Exclamation mark. Even if he is so ordinary and insignificant, if he can build the greatest railway in the world, he is still a hero. Connect the whole world together, and when you grow old, you can stand in front of your children and grandchildren, hold your chest high and proudly say, "I once used these hands to fight to change the world." Maybe that will be your most glorious moment. No one has awarded you a medal, but it doesn't matter. Because every sleeper, every rail, and every rivet is a witness. The trains running by and the passengers they carry are your achievements. All of these are invisible medals, and they will always be hung on your chest. Whenever Kurno thinks of this, he is full of strength. Although some workers laugh at him for being a little stupid. But what if he is a little stupid? Paul is quite stupid. Why did he stand up and resist when he was young? After Kiev was captured, wasn't it good to be a submissive citizen? Why did he join the army as a cavalryman and fight bloody battles in the patriotic war? Wasn't it good to hide in the rear? Why did he go to the terrible Siberia to build railways after the war? The cold wind and ice and snow even froze his originally strong body. Wouldn't it be good to retire and go home to farm? Why, after finally being able to live a peaceful life, do we have to fight against corruption and bureaucracy with unhealthy bodies and humble rights, and even make the last cry for it? Isn't it good to be obedient and go along with the crowd? Perhaps it is because of this unwillingness to live a good life that Paul Corcoran is Paul Corcoran, and it is also because of this that he is remembered by people. People always have to be a little spirited when they are alive. When the break was over, Colonel closed the How the Steel Was Tempered that he had started to read for the second time, and he carefully checked his equipment. I am a little stupid, I haven't read many books, and my junior high school education prevents me from becoming someone like Katyusha. She can be an excellent assistant and designer beside the chief engineer Dr. Banner. But I have my pride and faith. It may be worthless to some people. Because I am a little stupid, I just want to be a solid brick, a hard piece of iron. In this world, use my steel to realize my value. Although small and ordinary, I am an indispensable steel in this world. Pushing open the door of the dormitory, the sun rises, a golden sun. It uses its warm sunlight to sprinkle the Eastern European land that has begun to be filled with cold. The people who have been changed are not only the rural guys in Eastern Europe, but also the world-famous Doctor Strange has deviated from his life because of the things that happened to Li Ji and his companions. Doctor Strange did not have the car accident that ruined his career, nor did he finally find Kamartaki in his hard pursuit, and then inherited the mantle of the Ancient One and became the new generation of Supreme Sorcerer. Because of Li Ji and Thor, Strange has undergone many changes. He began to understand what he was afraid of. He was not afraid that he could not save the patient's life and refused to do those operations with extremely low success rates. He was not worried about his own signboard being smashed. The only thing he was worried about was that he would fall into the abyss of pain again. Just like the failed operation he did for his own sister. He didn't want to save anyone, but wanted to save himself. After understanding everything in his heart, Strange knew what he should do. He quit his high-paying job at a private hospital and joined the purely charitable Doctors Without Borders. For others, Doctors Without Borders provide free medical services in medically backward areas around the world. They are angels who save lives. But Strange knew very well that what he did was not simply to save others. What was more important was that he needed to save himself through such things. Save his frozen heart. Chile in South America used to be among the developed countries by selling guano. Even before World War I, Chile's navy was once stronger than that of the United States. But when the guano was mined out, the country was basically finished. Chile did not improve the country's infrastructure, scientific research and industrial construction during the guano dividend era. Instead, it used all the guano dividends to improve national welfare. For a period of time, Chile's national happiness was one of the top 10 countries in the world. Sounds great, right? But when the guano dividend disappeared, everything was back to square one. Chile even had to sell a lot of land to foreign agricultural groups for cash. For example, the Costa Group of Roberto Costa, the Sunspot, has a considerable number of farms in Chile. Among the more than 10,000 Tuvaluans who had been dispersed from Tuvalu, a considerable number of them work on the farms here. The farms mainly produce corn, which is then processed into corn syrup. Corn syrup is one of the most important sources of sugar raw materials in the world, and most beverages need to add this syrup to increase the sweetness. Penny, who immigrated from Tuvalu, works here, and she is very grateful for her current life. Although the work on the farm is a bit hard, it is much better than Tuvalu. She can't see the future in Tuvalu, especially her mother's leg nerve atrophy, which has no possibility of being cured in Tuvalu. But now there may be hope, because she heard that a team of medical organizations without borders is coming to Chile. Among them is a world-famous doctor who is a top expert in neurology. In any case, Penny hopes to get this expert to see her mother. I want to say, Professor, can we run here directly like this? I always feel that it's a bit dangerous to go directly to see Magneto. Li Ji asked while pushing Professor Charles' wheelchair in the land of South America. Following Li Ji was Lan, who helped him open the door of time and space. There was also a Thor. Professor Charles waved his hand and said, "It is still necessary, because now for mutants, the appearance of inhumans is a variable. We need to modify our attitude towards Marx. And the mutant country of Tuvalu can also be shown to him." Does he want to establish a country where mutants and humans live in peace, or let mutants become the new? We need to make a break. There are you, Thor, Lan and me. I think we should be able to have a relatively peaceful talk with Magneto. Professor Charles said with a smile. Okay. Li Ji could only agree with the professor's statement. Because capturing Magneto is one of his plans, especially when Tony wants to build a starport, then Magneto's ability becomes indispensable. Perhaps the ability of a Magneto to build a starport in the universe can be compared with 1,000 constructive steel armors. This ability is too important. Whether it is to convince people with reason or force, Magneto must be convinced. Now I just hope that the Hydra organization hidden in Chile can be more resilient, and not be wiped out by Magneto's minions without being able to lure him out. Li Ji hoped. Hydra is indeed a bit miserable, being beaten by the Brotherhood of Mutants and almost unable to raise their heads. If they are completely wiped out, it will be difficult to find a suitable person to take the blame in the future. As soon as Li Ji finished this sentence, Thor, Lan, and Professor Charles all looked at him strangely. P.S. It's the beginning of the month. Please vote for me. Chapter 691 The Unstable Hydra. Hydra is having a hard time now. For various reasons, they were targeted by the Brotherhood of Mutants. When a villain organization is targeted by another villain organization, especially when this villain organization has abilities that are not inferior to their own, and there are irreconcilable contradictions between the two parties, the brutality of the confrontation is beyond words. Hydra is an old villain organization with a deep-rooted foundation. Although the Brotherhood of Mutants was established a short time ago, Magneto's highly inflammatory language and powerful control ability make the Mutant Brothers no weaker than Hydra. From Asia to Africa, from Eastern Europe to South America, the two organizations have had nearly 10 confrontations in this year. And Hydra has always been in a relatively unfavorable situation. The reason is very simple. The Illuminati, with Li Ji as the mastermind, has been deliberately or unintentionally favoring the Brotherhood of Mutants in secret. Because Hydra is so powerful, it may suffer a loss if it relies solely on the strength of the Brotherhood of Mutants. So in order to exhaust the energy of both parties and make them mortal enemies, so that they can't care about other things, so that the Illuminati's various plans can be implemented smoothly. So the Illuminati actually put in a lot of effort in secret. Anyway, the ones who fight to death are all villains, so Li Ji himself doesn't feel bad. It's better than gathering a group of people and then foolishly fighting two people. Please, please. Heroes don't mean they are all a group of hot-blooded fools. This is not a Japanese hot-blooded animation. If the problem can be solved by being a pusher in secret, who would be stupid enough to go head-on? Exclamation mark. Of course, because the Illuminati secretly favors the side, including providing various information to Magneto through the professor, etc., Hydra's life is getting harder and harder. For example, Damon, one of Hydra's official employees, now feels that his life is very difficult. This is a lucky guy. He first worked in a secret research institute of Hydra's Singapore branch as a security guard. When Hydra attacked the Singapore branch, most of the Hydra members in the local research institute died. This lucky guy just fell down and fainted during the defense, and he became the lucky one who survived. Then he was transferred to the Western European branch and became a team leader of the security department. But just 1 month after taking office, the Western European branch was attacked again. Another team was wiped out. Damon had diarrhea because he ate hamburgers made with expired yellow mustard that day. He spent almost the entire afternoon on the toilet. Even if the company's alarm sounded, he couldn't get up from the toilet. Although he was about to collapse, he finally saved his life. In addition, when this incident was over, Damon, who originally planned to settle accounts with a store that used expired yellow mustard to make hamburgers, secretly broke into the store owner's home at night and left $1,000 in gratitude. Then he was transferred to Africa and worked there for about 3 weeks, and then the same thing happened again as the previous 2 times. This time, because Damon was not used in Africa, he became an errand boy. When he was attacked, it happened to be his turn to go out to buy takeout, so he escaped. Then it was Eastern Europe, South Asia, Central Asia. Generally speaking, Damon's luck has been saving his life. And now he has been transferred to the branch in South America, where there is an important gold mine and some rare minerals, which is one of the sources of secret funds and some important materials of the Hydra organization. Now he has become the leader of a team of 12 people. But he is now a little nervous about doing Hydra's work, or tired of it. Boss, How do you arrange the patrol mission today? The deputy leader of the team found Damon and asked about today's work. Old rules: patrol separately. Be careful of wild animals. Damon issued instructions according to the general process. Of course, there is one sentence he didn't say: be careful of mutants. But Damon thought that maybe he wouldn't be so unlucky this time, because the Mutant Brotherhood had attacked various research institutions before. It can be seen that the attacks of the Brotherhood of Mutants were premeditated, and they were all aimed at Hydra's research institutes. And this is just a mine, and there is not even a village within a radius of 20 kilometers. Hydra has not set up any research institutes here. This place should be relatively safe, right? Damon was not very sure, because he didn't know that maybe there was a group of people secretly giving Magneto false information. For example, this is an important secret research institute of Hydra or something. Because although Damon is patrolling now, he is a little absent-minded. He has a few newspaper clippings and a notebook in his hand. You ask him why he is looking at these? It's simple: because Damon is looking for a new job. Damn, is it so hard to find a job now? I just want to find a decent job in Northern Europe. Are the recruitment requirements for security guards so high now? There was no one around Damon, and he muttered to himself while holding the newspaper. What bad luck. Whether it's Singapore, the Netherlands, or the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I don't care if those places are attacked by the Brotherhood of Mutants. Why did the organization reduce my salary? They also deducted my pension and even stopped paying my social security and medical insurance. This is unfair. I only get a salary of $9,725 after tax every month. If I don't get a pension of $5,000 when I retire at the age of 60, this job is simply meaningless. And we have to consider the factor of rising prices. Maybe a pension of $5,000 will not be enough for me to live a decent retirement life in the future. Damon made an X on a recruitment newspaper. A Swiss bank needs to recruit professional VIP security personnel. The salary is not low and the treatment is good. But the security personnel are required to know at least 4 mainstream foreign languages. Please, if I knew 4 mainstream foreign languages, I wouldn't have to do this hopeless job at Hydra. Damon thought indignantly in his heart, cursing. If I had known, I shouldn't have come to Hydra when I was choosing a career. I should have gone to Magneto when the Brotherhood of Mutants was recruiting. I heard that the average salary of the Brotherhood of Mutants is 12 percentage points higher than that of Hydra, and there are benefits during holidays. In the summer, they will send free soda home, and at Christmas, you can get Spanish ham and several boxes of olive oil and high-gluten flour. This is much better than the stingy Hydra. Especially after the Red Skull came back, Hydra has become stingy to a new level. Now I heard that even the high-temperature subsidy for working outside has been cancelled and replaced by direct subsidies for iced drinks. Damn it. I'm not exposed to the sun like this every day just to drink a few more bottles of Pepsi. Damon turned over another clipping, and the job on it still did not meet the requirements. From what he just said, it can be heard that Damon is actually a mutant. Otherwise, he would not have said that there were 2 paths in front of him when he made choices in life. One leading to Hydra and the other to the Brotherhood of Mutants. Why did Damon choose Hydra instead of the Brotherhood of Mutants, which had better treatment? This needs to start with Damon's mutant ability. Damon's mutant ability is very useful from a certain perspective. But from another perspective, it is surprisingly useless. Because his mutant ability allows him to speak fluent Chinese, a level of the first-class level in the Mandarin test for broadcasting and hosting, and can read Chinese characters without any obstacles, including simplified and traditional Chinese characters and various unfamiliar and lonely Chinese characters. So in addition to mastering his native English, Damon also masters Chinese fluently. Would Magneto be interested in such a mutant ability? Damon thought it was not good enough, so he finally chose to join Hydra. However, he has now escaped death several times and has begun to want to quit, mainly because Hydra has deducted his pension and social security and medical insurance. Well, if it really doesn't work, I can only go to China to be a foreign teacher. Damon looked through all the recruitment information, and it was really hard to find a job. But it's not easy to get a work passport and visa for China. I'll ask someone to help me with it. $10,000 should be enough. But I don't know how long it will take to earn back the money as a foreign teacher in China. I heard that New Oriental pays very well. Damon opened his notebook, which recorded another plan of his, about how to go to China smoothly and become an English teacher. Damon felt that his mutant ability might be able to help him in this matter. I heard that now excellent English teachers in China can earn tens of thousands a month, and well-known lecturers can earn hundreds of thousands or even more a year. If it really works, he decided not to work for Hydra anymore. At least in a spacious and bright classroom, teaching English to beautiful Chinese girls is better than fighting for life and death in Hydra. When Damon lowered his head and thought about his future life, and planned how to save money to buy a house in Shanghai, China, he suddenly bumped into someone, just like bumping into a piece of iron plate. Damon fell to the ground with a clang. Magneto Marx looked at the absent-minded Hydra member lying in front of him, and he originally planned to kill him directly. But he suddenly stopped when he was about to do it. Magneto murmured, "Mutant." Magneto did not kill Damon, but waved his hand, and a strong magnetic field bound the other party. Just like the yin and yang poles of a magnet. Magneto added an anode magnetic field to Damon, and a cathode magnetic field to the land where Damon was lying. Now Damon was like an iron nail attracted by a huge magnet and could not move. Although he looked ugly, he seemed to have escaped again. Because when Magneto finished all this, his massacre of the Hydra gold mine had just begun. Chapter 692, the Red Skull should have been in the coffin long ago. Although Damon was trapped by Magneto and couldn't move, like a frozen salted fish, with no hope of turning over. But from a certain perspective, he was lucky. At least his life was saved, right? Maybe it was because Magneto knew that he was a mutant, so he saved his life? Damon thought silently in his heart. This time he must fake his death to get out of the Hydra organization. This broken organization has poor benefits, low wages, and serious class stratification. He worked hard for 10 years, from a 22-year-old young boy to a 32-year-old standard uncle. He is still a team leader now, and there is no hope of promotion. This broken organization is doomed. I'd better find a way to get myself a Chinese work visa. Damon made up his mind and decided to devote the rest of his life to China's foreign language education. Magneto didn't know how lucky the guy he trapped was. In fact, this was the 11th time that Magneto Max had spared this guy's life. Although Magneto had not really met Damon before due to various accidents. But this time, maybe it was because Magneto was in a good mood or something. Maybe Damon had some hidden mutant ability, such as 100% not attracting hatred. In short, it was strange that Magneto did not kill Damon. Damon was lucky, but this did not mean that he would bring this luck to other Hydra colleagues. For Magneto Max, the revolution can fail, but Hydra must die. This is the basic principle and Magneto's unchanging belief. When he received intelligence from South America, he learned that there was not only a medium-sized mine of Hydra hidden in this mine, but also a mysterious research organization hidden under the mine. What this research institute studied was not good news for Magneto. They were studying methods and equipment to restrain Magneto's use of magnetism. Because Hydra had suffered a great loss from Magneto. They need to study the anti-Magneto artifact, and according to the intelligence, Hydra is secretly studying in this mine. Because there seems to be a magnetic anomaly under this mine that meets the research conditions. After they have studied this anti-Magneto artifact, they will launch a large-scale counterattack against a brotherhood of mutants. Because Magneto not only plays the role of leader and guide in the entire brotherhood of mutants, but also a strategic nuclear weapon. So when Magneto got this information, he put down all the work in his hands and rushed to this place as quickly as possible. There was not even time to organize the mutant task force and the brotherhood of mutants. But it doesn't matter, because Magneto is more powerful than 100 mutant task forces. The magnetic field here doesn't feel abnormal. Magneto frowned. With his sensitivity to the magnetic field, there is no reason for him not to feel the abnormal point of the magnetic field. But this does not rule out that Hydra used special equipment to cover up this abnormal point. Because Magneto still believes in the correctness of his source of information, because for so long, Magneto has been relying on this information to annihilate Hydra strongholds one by one. Although they had different ideas, he didn't think Charles would lie to him about this matter. No matter what the reason was for him to tell him everything, if he had to make a list of people he could trust in the world, after choosing and choosing, there was only one person he could trust. Professor Charles, who was dozens of kilometers away, suddenly felt his whole body tremble, as if an electric current passed through his body. Luigi glanced at him and asked with concern, "Are you okay, Professor?" "It's okay, it's okay. It's just that I thought about how I should face Marx when I see him later. I hope he won't tear me apart because of the false information I provided." Professor Charles' smile was a little forced and he looked a little worried. Thor waved his hammer. Unless he has the ability to tear apart a star with 3 times the energy of the sun, there is no hope. Thor confidently raised his Mjolnir. This Thor's hammer contained all the power of a huge star. This gold mine in South America and the associated rare ores can bring Hydra nearly $115 million in cash profit after mining and refining every year. It is also a very important source of cash for Hydra. Of course, the most important thing is the associated minerals of this mine, among which the associated rare earth minerals are very important to Hydra. Because it is becoming increasingly difficult to buy rare earths in the world today, the best way is to control some mineral veins in your own hands. Therefore, although this mine does not have any important research institutions, Hydra has already deployed a large number of security personnel, 850 fully armed Hydra professional mercenaries. There is also a special mutant, not a mutant, nor an alien, stationed here. Will-O-Wu is a handsome, 1.83 meter tall and quite strong middle-aged man. His original name is Jackson, a scientist who studied electromagnetism in a research institute under Hydra. But because of an accident in the experiment, his body was decomposed by molecules. But later, under his control, he was able to control the molecules to reaggregate his body. Will-O-Ghost can fly, and the speed is about 150 kilometers per hour, which is not very fast. He can lift about 12 tons of weight, which is pretty good. Anyway, if Captain America lifts it, it will take 12 Captain Rogers to lift this weight. In addition, Will-O-Ghost can also control the electromagnetic ability nearby, which is also one of his long-range attack methods. Will-O-Ghost, who was originally an electromagnetic scientist, has become resistant to the laboratory because of the previous experimental accident. He can't go into the laboratory to do experiments and research. For this reason, Hydra can only transfer him to another position within the group. After all, Will-O-Ghost is still very valuable. With his attack power, he can already be ranked among the middle level. It would be a pity for Hydra to fire him because he can't do experiments, because it is not easy to recruit workers now, especially for mid to high-end talents. Will-O-Ghost was transferred to this gold mine in South America to work, responsible for the security of the entire vein. And because of his electromagnetic talent, he can easily find the exact location of each vein through electromagnetic feedback, which saves Hydra a lot of money. So Will-O-Ghost has had a good life in recent years. Although this place is barren, Hydra has equipped him with various materials very well, including a helicopter that can be used at any time so that he can go to big cities for shopping, leisure and looking for girls. Will-O-Ghost also wants to just muddle along like this, until he retires. Anyway, he can't be a scientist, and it's quite easy to muddle along if he doesn't have anything to pursue. He also had this mentality when he went to work today. He played the Minesweeper game on his computer in his office to relieve his boredom, waiting for the time to punch in after get off work. Recently, Hydra has been strict with internal attendance. For middle and senior management like him, fingerprint iris punching is used. And this attendance record will be sent to the Hydra headquarters. It's no longer possible to just take a walk in the morning and then go home to play in the afternoon like before. You have to pretend to be muddled. Will-O-Ghost doesn't want his full attendance award to go down the drain. It's getting more and more troublesome since Red Skull came to power. Will-O-Ghost failed to mine and was blown up. He slapped the mouse and thought fiercely. What is Red Skull, an old antique from more than 70 years ago, doing back on stage? He doesn't understand the world now. You guys, please accommodate me, I'll accommodate you, and we can just get by with a smile on our face. Why are you so serious? Do you really expect Hydra to reunite the world? Please. Please. You didn't succeed 70 years ago, okay? Look at Captain America. When he was still the captain, he foiled your plots countless times. Look at the Discovery Channel and National Geographic. They have made so many documentaries to analyze how Captain America defeated you. Even Japan's NHK, China's CCTV, and the UK's BBC have produced corresponding documentaries or TV series. There are at least 100 ways listed in them about how Captain Rogers could defeat you. And now that Captain Rogers has become the director of SWORD, you have even less chance. He has returned to the arena after 70 years, and his status has skyrocketed. You've been around for 70 years, and now Hydra has been beaten by the Brotherhood of Mutants and can't even raise its head. You're really going backwards. Will-O-Ghost is very resistant to this unfree work system, but he can only endure it for the full attendance award. But this does not mean that he cannot greet the family of Red Skull Schmidt, the top leader of Hydra, in his heart. Just when Willow Ghost was about to start a new Minesweeper game, he suddenly noticed that there were unusual electromagnetic fluctuations in the air. Although he was just idling around, since he had received his salary, he still had to work when it was time to work. So Willow Ghost activated his ability and instantly molecularized himself and wandered in the air to check what was happening outside. But when he came out, he regretted it. Damn, I should have run away. This was the only thought of Willow Ghost when he saw what was happening outside. So what exactly happened outside? Chapter 693, those who are called something like king are usually very powerful. Before the Will-O-the-Wisp went out to investigate the situation, Magneto strode directly into the gold mining area of Hydra. He walked in boldly, ignoring the defense of Hydra. This handsome old man in a leather jacket walking in directly like this is of course very eye-catching. The top leaders of Hydra are not stupid. Since the Brotherhood of Mutants attacked the branch of Hydra, the top leaders of Hydra sent photos of several important combat forces in the Brotherhood of Mutants to all the security personnel below. The security personnel on duty in front of the surveillance video found the other party almost immediately, and quickly recognized that the other party was the legendary Magneto. Damn. It's Magneto. The guy in charge of security monitoring felt that he was unlucky. Magneto is a cruel guy with a black heart. It is not an exaggeration to say that he kills people as easily as breathing. He didn't know why Magneto appeared in this barren mining area, but since Magneto has appeared, it is estimated that it is too late to escape now. So the monitoring department has notified the security department to organize the first line of defense. Everyone change into anti-magnetic equipment, and use plastic bullets for rifles. Several captains in charge of security have begun to mobilize their men. For them, there is a bad news and a good news today. The good news is that the attacking mutant brotherhood only has Magneto, and there are no other mutant agents. As for the bad news, that is, Magneto may be more terrible than a group of mutant agents. Now we can only pray silently that the anti-magnetic protective gear and plastic lethal bullets that have just been distributed can work on Magneto. After several exchanges of fire, Hydra's scientific researchers found that Magneto is really difficult to deal with because he has extremely keen control over metal. He can control even a little bit of metal. Metal bullets have no lethality to him, but are more like providing him with fire support. With this understanding, Hydra developed non-magnetic protective gear and plastic lethal bullets. I hope it can work on Magneto. And this equipment was distributed to important branches of Hydra on a large scale. The gold mines in South America can bring in more than $100 million a year. They are also very important branches for Hydra, so they are the first places to get equipment. However, several security captains did not expect that they would use this kind of equipment so soon. The security team of more than 800 people quickly assembled. The training of Hydra was still effective. Although this group of security teams is called security, their actual combat effectiveness is not much different from that of the conventional armies of most countries, and they are also equipped with some individual heavy firepower. The entire mining area is concave, and the gate is the only opening. After entering the gate, there is a terrain surrounded by mountains on three sides. When Magneto passed through the gate of the mining area and came to the mining area, he was actually surrounded by more than 800 fully armed Hydra militants. Magneto, who is wearing a leather jacket, sunglasses and gloves, did not seem to feel the siege in the dark. He just smiled. When he smiled, the captain of the 1st Security Brigade of the Hydra gold mine gave the order. He said in a steady voice, "Concentrate firepower and fight." When the word fight came out, all the security guards received the order. Including Damon, who was supposed to patrol the periphery of the mine area. He also received the signal, but now he is like a frozen salted fish and can't move, let alone fire. Of course, even if he can move now, he will not choose to be an enemy of Magneto but turn around and run away immediately. However, other Hydra members may not have Damon's judgment. More people still chose to listen to their superiors and pull the trigger. In an instant, the whole valley of the mine area was filled with gunfire. More than 800 rifles fired at the same time, and each rifle poured out its firepower at a rate of 600 per minute. Plastic lethal bullets were overwhelming, and a dense firepower network like a spider web was woven. The barrage was like rain, and the gunfire was like thunder. This was not the first time that Magneto faced this kind of scene. In fact, He had faced this kind of attack many times in his life, and he had already gotten used to it. But today seemed a little different. When Magneto Marx wanted to control the bullets flying in the air to stop attacking, or even return to attack their masters, he seemed to be unable to control them very well. Magneto's originally smiling face froze slightly. And then, for the first time in history, Magneto actually failed to control the bullets this time. The pouring rain of bullets hit the rocky ground and raised a huge dust storm. The eyes of the captain of the 1st Brigade of the Hydra Goldmine security team suddenly lit up, and he shouted loudly, "Intensive attack! Intensive attack! This weapon is useful for Magneto. He can't control this plastic. Magneto controls metal, he can't control plastic." Yes, maybe? Standing on the hillside dozens of kilometers away, Li-Ji saw the situation at the scene through a high-power magnifying glass. He looked at Professor Charles and asked, "Don't you need to save Magneto? He doesn't seem to be able to control things like plastic." Charles looked at Li-Ji in surprise. "Who told you?" Li-Ji touched his chin. He couldn't say that he saw it in the original X-Men movie. He remembered that in the original movie, Magneto was subdued by human police with a plastic gun. This seems to be his nemesis. Professor Charles looked at Li-Ji in deep thought, and he couldn't help but say, "You don't think Max can only control metal? Huh? Is there anything else?" Because the memory of X-Men in the previous life was too deep for Li-Ji, he was a little bit unresponsive for a while. Charles said with some amusement, "If Max can only control a metal, then call him Metal King. Why call him Magneto?" Huh? Exclamation mark. Li-Ji clapped his hands. This seems to make sense. It seems that he was deceived by the movie. Charles looked at the storm raised by hundreds of rifles calmly. "Do you know what Magneto is? All the magnetic forces in the world cannot escape Marx's control. As long as he gives him enough energy as a backup, he can control the magnetic force to tear a planet apart. Of course, his use of magnetic force is no longer so simple and crude, but more meticulous." Professor Charles glanced at Li-Ji. "Our galaxy itself is a huge magnetic field, and the Earth we live on is also emitting magnetic fields all the time. Similarly, there are magnetic fields in our bodies. It can even be said that everything in this world has a magnetic field if it is not artificially removed. There are very few things in nature that are completely free of any magnetism. Even bioelectricity is a way of expressing magnetism. And all of this is within the control of Marx." Li-Ji's mouth opened slightly, as if Magneto's ability exceeded his expectations. The storm-like attack lasted for nearly 3 minutes, and the place where Magneto was before was already covered with rolling sand and dust and nothing could be seen. But the first captain felt that such a saturation attack should be enough. After all, Magneto is not the Hulk, and he has never been heard of being able to resist gun attacks with his body alone. So he ordered his subordinates to stop. He was going to see what Magneto's body would look like after the smoke cleared. Maybe killing Magneto would allow him to get a large bonus. The captain waited for the smoke to clear with great interest. But sometimes the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. When the smoke cleared, Magneto's body did not appear. What was visible was a cover made of gravel, which covered the direction where Magneto had stood before. The gravel that was supposed to be scattered now blocked the storm-like attack like a copper wall. Countless plastic bullets were blocked by the steel-like sand wall. As mentioned before, Magneto's ability is magnetism. He relied on magnetic force to forcibly form the originally scattered gravel into a copper wall. And within the defense of the wall, Magneto did not simply wait for the opponent's attack to stop. Because he discovered something very interesting. Hydra seemed to be really trying to deal with him. All the preparations of the Hydra members were non-magnetic. It was obvious that the magnetism was artificially removed to prevent him from controlling these weapons. But does it make sense? Magneto Marx smiled slightly, because the scientists of Hydra forgot one thing, that the human body itself is a magnetic field. The exposed bioelectricity was as dazzling as a bonfire in the dark night to Marx. The electromagnetic that others could not see or touch had rhythm and color in Magneto's eyes. For example, he particularly liked to see a kind of electromagnetic color, that is, the red electromagnetic wave emitted when the human brain was highly tense. This bright color was very eye-catching. While waiting behind the sand wall, Magneto leisurely recorded the brainwave magnetic field of all Hydra security guards one by one, a total of 850. Well, not bad. It seems that the gunfire outside has stopped. Marx waved his hand to remove the sand wall. When he removed the sand wall, The Hydra security captain found that Magneto was not dead, and he wanted to continue to call his team members to shoot and attack. But at this time, Marx did something. Magneto Marx looked around and snapped his fingers. Snap! All 850 security guards in the gold mine fell down without any signs. No one knew what happened, not even Li Ji in the distance. Only the molecularized will-o'-the-wisp understood what happened, and he took a breath of cold air. Because his ability was electromagnetic, he could also feel the changes in electromagnetics. If he guessed correctly, Magneto Marx instantly released a high-voltage magnetic field to the brains of all Hydra members, instantly disrupting their brain waves. In an instant, the bioelectric charge was overloaded, and it only took 1/10 of a second for this overload to burn all the neurons in the brain. This is commonly known as brain death. Maybe other body functions can still be maintained for a while, but these people are indeed dead. And it was in an instant, and Magneto, who did all this, didn't even have to spend any effort. Because he controlled these magnetic forces and didn't even need to exert any effort himself, the Earth itself was a huge source of magnetic force. To some extent, the entire Earth was Magneto's weapon. Chapter 694. Who came up with this broken plan? How terrible is Magneto? Anyway, if you let the will-o'-the-wisp describe it, he doesn't know how to describe Magneto's terribleness, because everything that is happening now has exceeded the scope of the will-o'-the-wisp's cognition. As a mutant who also uses electromagnetic ability as his main ability, the former electromagneticist will-o'-the-wisp also works hard to exercise his electromagnetic application ability, including relying on the frequency band of electromagnetic feedback to distinguish different geological layers to explore the direction of the vein, and relying on electromagnetic ability to make himself invisible. There is also the use of magnetic force for anti-gravity flight, and the electromagnetic molecules of his body can be dispersed in the air, and can be reassembled. In terms of combat power, including the use of electromagnetic characteristics, the will-o'-the-wisp can instantly boost ordinary current to ultra-high voltage. Only a current source is needed as a trigger, and he can create a super-strong lightning. The electromagnetic gun weapon that can only be set up on a destroyer using scientific equipment is one of the conventional forces for the will-o'-the-wisp. As an electromagneticist, the will-o'-the-wisp feels that he has created many uses of electromagnetics, or that he is, to some extent, the person who understands electromagnetics best in the world. If it weren't for the fact that he can't overcome his fear now and can't go back to the laboratory to do experiments. If I can continue to do research, maybe I can win the Nobel Prize in Physics. Although I don't know if the Science Society is willing to give the award to Hydra scientists, but after meeting Magneto today, Will-O-Wisp realized that his use of electromagnetism was a joke. His use of electromagnetism is still only at the most basic level. Or it is a technical application at the macro level, which does not actually involve the final form and original form of electromagnetism. But Magneto is different. Magneto Marx can use the Earth's own magnetic field to interfere with humans standing on the Earth at a microscopic level with a snap of his fingers. He can accurately control the direction of each person's bioelectricity and electromagnetic field, and carefully separate the bioelectromagnetic field of the general organs of the human body from the electromagnetic field generated by the brain. And this interference has reached a jaw-dropping level. It is as accurate as a top surgeon removing a necrotic nerve, or even more accurate than a surgical operation. Because Magneto's operation this time at least reached the atomic level of micro-operation. No extra energy was wasted, and all overloaded electromagnetics were just enough to burn a person's brain. This kind of fighting style without fireworks is stronger than those violent fighting modes that destroy the world and shatter planets at will. Because the original intention of fighting is to kill the opponent, then why use your power to shatter planets or turn mountains and rivers upside down in vain? Is the excess energy useful for killing the opponent? The answer is no. This is just a simple waste of energy. A sharp knife can kill a person. The kinetic energy consumed by gently swinging the blade to cut the trachea may be only a dozen joules. Since this can kill the opponent, why do you have to hold a huge hammer for a long time and fail to hit the opponent? It may take thousands or tens of thousands of joules of work to kill the opponent. In fact, it may still be the dozen joules that kill the opponent, but the energy wasted may be thousands of times the actual demand. Magneto is a top scientist, and his scientific attainments are not necessarily worse than Dr. Hank and Professor Charles. The reason why he did not go further in the field of science is because he was distracted. Whether he formed the Brotherhood of Mutants or wanted to start a mutant revolution, These things distracted his experience and made it impossible for him to do research with peace of mind. But from the fact that he was able to help Charles build a Blackbird fighter and a brainwave controller, to equipment that transcended the times, Magneto's own scientific literacy is extremely high. As a precise scientist, Magneto does not like to waste all kinds of useless work on experiments. And this character is also brought into his combat mode. If it is not necessary, he does not like to make the battle look like it will destroy the world. Although he can do that kind of massive battle. But for Marx, this kind of battle is meaningless. Please, the purpose of the battle is to kill the enemy, not to attract attention like shooting Hollywood commercial blockbusters. As long as the opponent can die, then naturally the least consumption is the best. Cost accounting is also an important part of scientific research, okay. For the use of magnetism, Magneto Marx has reached the level of spectator application. He can easily control the form of electromagnetics from the state of electrons and combine the magnetic field into various forms he wants. The increase in age did not make Magneto's ability decline. On the contrary, because of the increase in experience and knowledge, he became stronger and stronger. The control is also becoming more and more precise. In the early years, the magnetic field that Magneto could control was still very limited, mainly concentrated on metal paper products, because the magnetic force of this kind of things is very obvious. And the more times he manipulated, the more accurate the manipulation became. Marx can now accurately control various magnetic fields and magnetic field cycles in a tiny creature. If he wants, he can make a towering old tree die in an instant, and he can also make an old tree on the verge of death come back to life. Reversing the flow of rivers is just pediatrics. As long as he wants, he can even stop the tides of the entire Earth and the ocean currents. Just stop the regular operation of the Earth's tides, and most of the creatures on the Earth will face a survival crisis. And human civilization will also be affected unprecedentedly. It is even said that many countries will be on the verge of destruction, or simply die out. Of course, the only thing to be thankful for is that Magneto is not invincible. He is not an Omega-level mutant, and his energy is not unlimited. Otherwise, maybe he would have declared war on all countries in the world alone? The Will-O-the-Wisp clearly sensed how strong Magneto was, and he was now more and more convinced that it was a mistake for Hydra to be enemies with such a person. Please, I don't want to be enemies with such a guy. Without thinking, the Will-O-the-Wisp, which had transformed into a molecular state, wanted to escape. But he might have been too nervous, so he forgot one thing. When his body was electromagnetically molecularized, it was so conspicuous to Magneto, just like a spotlight in the dark. The moment the Will-O-the-Wisp just escaped, Magneto found him. Marx smiled. Interesting. Marx did not make any move, but the Will-O-the-Wisp found that he could not move. In the molecular state, he was actually imprisoned by a strong magnetic field. And what was worse was that Magneto waved his hand, and his molecular body began to fly towards him. Damn it. I want to escape. The farther away from this devil, the better. But the Will-O-the-Wisp's struggle was in vain, and Magneto accurately controlled the electromagnetic molecular body of the Will-O-the-Wisp. For Marx, this strange electromagnetic mass was very interesting. It was worth studying, and it could even be used as a weapon. Marx waved his hand, and large chunks of rock broke out of the underground veins. At the same time, the metal minerals originally mixed with the rocks were easily extracted by Magneto. No refining was needed, only Magneto's subtle manipulation, and the original ore was instantly turned into highly refined steel. This efficiency far exceeded any steel-making blast furnace and forging machine made by scientific equipment. And Magneto waved his hand, and the metal block that was originally made into an iron nail was made into the shape of a bottle. And the body of the ghost fire was also put into the bottle after it was formed, and Magneto also added a circle of magnetic field seal to the bottle to prevent the ghost fire from escaping. Putting aside Magneto's appearance, this scene is very much like a great immortal capturing a demon. Especially Magneto is going to study the ghost fire later, and intends to use it as a weapon in the future. This is really like a peerless immortal finding a great demon in some fairy tales. Then he prepared to refine this big demon with supreme mana, either into a pill for cultivating immortals, or into a peerless immortal weapon or something. From this point of view, maybe Magneto himself is very similar to some immortals who cultivate immortals? However, Magneto does not have time to read online novels, nor does he know the so-called cultivation culture. Even if he knows, he probably won't be interested. Because he has other things to do now. He needs to find the secret base in this mine, although this base does not exist, because Charles said that there are anti-Magneto treasures being studied here. Just as Magneto began to look for the non-existent research base, Charles also explained to Li Ji and others what to pay attention to when facing Magneto later. If it is not necessary, we'd better not fight with Marx. Electromagnetic force is one of the most important original forces in nature. Marx, who has mastered this power, is very difficult to deal with. We should focus on persuasion. Charles glanced at Li Ji. Li Ji felt that it was best not to look at him at this time, because Magneto's fighting power seemed to be a bit off the charts just now. If possible, he really didn't want to face Magneto. Damn it! Who came up with the idea of capturing Magneto and enslaving him? Li Ji thought viciously. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 695, The Trouble was diverted to the east. At the vein of the Hydra gold mine, the entire mining area has stopped production because of Magneto Marx's attack. A group of miners who were originally responsible for the excavation began to flee. Thousands of people fled in all directions, like a tide. Magneto Marx was in no mood to stop them. His purpose of coming here was not to waste his strength to kill a group of miners. It would be enough to kill a group of professional mercenary security guards of Hydra. Why waste energy to kill a group of useless ordinary people who were directly recruited from the local area to take charge of the hardest mining work? Magneto was still disdainful of doing such a thing. Just like what he said to Professor Charles before, violence and killing cannot solve the problem, only revolution can do it. What is the first premise of revolution? Marx learned a lot from famous revolutionaries including Che Guevara. The most critical first premise is to unite all forces that can be united. Then it is to strike all forces that need to be struck. So massacre ordinary people? Please, Magneto is not a murderer, okay? At least a Magneto in this world is not the X-Men series shot by Fox Company that Li Ji saw in his previous life. In the original trilogy of the mutant story of that series, not only was Magneto's ability weakened, but even his charm and IQ as a villain were weakened. Regardless of whether the mutant world that Magneto wants to build is a world of mutant privileges. But before the whole plan succeeds, he will not easily reveal his ultimate goal. Build high walls, store up food, and slowly claim the throne. These things are not only said by Liu Bo and Zhu Yuan's Hang. In the history of the world, many outstanding politicians and military strategists understand this basic truth. For Magneto, the most important thing for him now is to find the so-called Secret Research Institute of Hydra, find their research projects, and pay attention to how far they have progressed. After all, no one likes others to develop a weapon specifically for themselves, whether Tony Stark wants to develop an anti-Magneto armor or Hydra wants to develop an anti-Magneto treasure. For Magneto, he must be unhappy. Although anti-XX is generally overturned by X, it still exists. So Magneto held his breath and prepared to find the legendary research institute that was researching the anti-Magneto artifact, and then capture the researchers inside one by one. Let them experience what Magneto's anger is. Magneto has researched no less than 100 ways to torture people with magnetism or use magnetic fields to force confessions over the years. So when Magneto was enthusiastically looking for a non-existent research institute deep in the mine, Li Ji and his team quietly came to the already quiet mining area. However, before entering the mining area, they found Damon in a frozen salted fish state. Who is this guy? Li Ji took a look at Damon. He didn't dress like an ordinary miner, but like a Hydra mercenary. Li Ji wanted to kill him directly. When Damon saw Li Ji pulling out the knife, he shouted, "Wait, don't kill me. I was actually forced to join Hydra. I am actually a mutant, and I have always been loyal to the Brotherhood of Mutants. But Hydra caught me. Let me go. I don't have much ability. My mutant ability is just to speak Chinese. After this incident, I have planned to fake my death and escape. I will go to China to be a foreign language teacher under an assumed name, and never participate in any disputes again, and retire from the world until I die. I swear," Damon said solemnly. Li Ji was confused. What's going on? What did I hear? A mercenary of Hydra is a mutant, and he plans to retire from the underworld from today, and is preparing to travel across the ocean to teach in China? A mutant who has been in Hydra for 10 years goes to China to be a teacher and contributes the rest of his life to China's foreign language career. It's very exciting to think about it. Li Ji thought it would be better not to continue this excitement, so he pulled out the knife and prepared to get to know Damon directly. But after Professor Charles glanced at Damon, he said to Li Ji, "Let's go. This guy is timid and has never made any achievements in Hydra. He was just pretending to be a passerby when he robbed a gas station. He didn't even really fire a few shots in the 10 years of Hydra." Professor Charles looked at Damon in disbelief. "How did you survive in Hydra for 10 years? Haha, I don't know, maybe it's luck." Damon smiled foolishly. "Forget it, let's go. Maybe we still need to borrow Mr. Damon's luck, so that we will have better luck in the negotiation with Magneto later." Professor Charles said so. Since Professor Charles has asked to save Damon's life, and he has also checked Damon's memory, this guy really hasn't done many bad things. He just regards Hydra as a place to work and earn a salary. So Li Ji could only put away his knife, and then looked at Damon. "You are so lucky, Magneto didn't kill you, and I didn't kill you either. Go back and buy a lottery ticket, maybe you can win the Euro Millions." Damon suddenly had an idea and thought that Li Ji's proposal was very good. The first prize of the Euro Millions has accumulated to 190 million euros. If he wins, will he still need to go to China to be a foreign teacher? Damon has decided that he must buy a lottery ticket when he returns later. If he can win the first prize, he is willing to donate 90% to public welfare education in South America and Asia. As long as he can win. Damon made a great wish unconsciously. Magneto was very angry. He had explored all the mines, but he didn't find the so-called mysterious research institute at all. Did Charles lie to me? Probably not. Marx rejected this conjecture. Most likely Charles also received a false message. Marx thought this reason was still reasonable, because Hydra would probably release smoke bombs to confuse the site. Although he did not find the legendary Mysterious Research Institute, Magneto felt that this trip was still valuable after destroying a Hydra gold mine. He would gather some people later, and then use his ability to take away all the gold and rare earth mines here, which would probably bring him billions of dollars. Magneto did not care about whether it was a poor or rich mine when mining. Those poor mines that were not worth mining for mining companies were still profitable for Magneto. The Marx mining group had a lot of slag-type veins left over from other people's mining around the world, and they all relied on Magneto's ability to operate to maintain profitability. When Magneto was thinking about how to mine the entire vein here intact, he noticed that there were several strong magnetic fields in the mine. He was very familiar with one of them, and that was his old friend, Professor X, Charles. Magneto flew out of the mine, and looking at Li Ji and the other three standing outside the mine waiting for him to come out, Magneto said, "Charles." Professor Charles nodded. "It's really not easy to see you, Maximum." Magneto frowned. "Want to see me? So the information you gave me is all false? There is actually no Mysterious Research Institute here." Max figured out the joints in an instant. He felt like he was being fooled, especially by Professor Charles. This feeling was not good. You know, most of the time, it was only Magneto who fooled the professor. When was it the turn of the bald professor to take the initiative? Max was very unhappy, and when he was unhappy, the magnetic field around him began to show signs of going berserk. The professor noticed this and immediately said, "Don't be angry, Max. We have something important to talk to you about. You can listen to Nightwalker's explanation of the specific things. I think you should know who Nightwalker is." As he spoke, the professor turned his eyes to the direction where Li Ji was. And Max also focused his attention on Li Ji. "Huh? Professor, why are you looking at me like this? Wait. Why did Magneto also focus his attention? Even from such a distance, I can feel that terrible electromagnetic aura. No, something is wrong. Why do I feel that the whole thing seems a little familiar, Professor? You are doing this, you know, it is called shifting the blame? There is another term called passing the buck, okay. Who did you learn such a sinister trick from? Magneto is your good friend, not mine. Why would I do such a dangerous thing?" Li Ji's face was a little bitter when facing the angry Magneto. Chapter 696, Magneto doesn't like to listen to nonsense. Being deceived by Professor Charles is something that Magneto Marx cannot tolerate. After all, from the perspective of human nature, if someone you trust very much suddenly deceives you one day, and this deception is not a joke, most people will be surprisingly angry. For example, you ask someone out for a midnight snack, and then you wait for an hour at the place, and then tell you that you are not coming. If this happens, many people will want to turn the tables. Magneto is in this state now, especially since he just spent a lot of effort to attack the Hydra base, so he is surprisingly angry now. And this kind of anger should have been faced with Professor Charles, but now because of Professor Charles's change of subject, Magneto's hatred has been transferred to Li Ji. The sand under Magneto Marx's feet began to churn slightly, because the magnetic field around Magneto began to be abnormal. It seems that this unhappy mood has begun to materialize. Magneto still knows about Nightwalker. This guy is not a very remarkable character, it seems that he is just a little famous in New York City. And he also posted some chicken soup videos on the internet before. In this day and age, you can become famous by posting chicken soup articles. Don't you know that drinking too much chicken soup will cause excessive fat and lead to serious diseases? Exclamation mark. Chicken soup for the soul does not add fat to the body, but it will add fat to the mind. Magneto has no good feelings for Nightcrawler, who posted chicken soup videos like everyone for me, I for everyone. He hates this kind of rotten people who are full of nonsense but useless. So he has almost no mood to listen to this kind of people's nonsense. Marx is not a person who likes to listen to others talk about big principles. He prefers to beat up the guy he hates, and then make him kneel down and explain the whole story. So when Magneto just focused his attention on Li Ji, the magnetic field on Li Ji's side suddenly became abnormal. Super high electromagnetic pressure suddenly appeared and attacked the human body. To be precise, it attacked the neurons in the joints of the body. If this electromagnetic pressure is concentrated, the neurons in the joints of Li Ji will be completely burned. In simple terms, he will be disabled in the future. Magneto is really vicious. He didn't even give me a chance to speak. Li Ji actually felt the sudden electromagnetic anomaly around his body. Thor, who is more sensitive to electricity, Thor was currently dressed as the Dragon Warrior, also attacked at the same moment Magneto did. Thor's hammer was full of lightning, and powerful electric current burst out. The blue and white jumping arcs were like thunder dragons, setting up thunder cages around Li Ji and others as protection. Electricity and magnetism are inseparable. Magneto can control electromagnetics and use magnetic force to attack the enemy, which is very scary. It can even be said that Marx can use the Earth's own magnetic field to attack the enemy. Most people can compete with him, because just disrupting people's magnetic field can kill most people. But this majority of people does not include Li Ji, Thor and Lan. Magneto is very strong, he can interfere with the operation of the magnetic field. But this strength has a limit. For example, he cannot interfere with the magnetic field of a star like the sun, because Magneto's energy is limited. And the energy fused in Thor's hammer is far more than the sun. The violent thunder dragon gathers extremely high electromagnetic energy. The more scattered the electromagnetic energy is, the easier it is for Magneto to control it. The more concentrated the electromagnetic energy is, and when there is a powerful commander, it is more difficult for Magneto to seize control. When the controller of this thunder and lightning is Thor, it is not impossible for Magneto to seize these thunder and lightning, but it will be quite troublesome. The blue and white thunder dragon flashed in the air, and thousands of electric currents were like flying silver snakes. The crackling sound was the sound of electric currents piercing the air. Get out of my way. Magneto was really angry. As the most powerful electromagnetic king on Earth, Marx never thought that electric current could escape his control. Even if the opponent is Thor, although Magneto doesn't know it. The surging energy surged from Magneto, and he forcibly opened a hole in the thunder and lightning cage created by Thor, and even seized control of a thunder dragon. Thor frowned. Magneto's control over electromagnetics was indeed beyond his imagination. Unless Thor was willing to release all the energy of Thor's hammer, he was not sure that his lightning energy would not be completely controlled by Magneto. After the lightning defense gap was opened, Magneto seized a thunder dragon created by Thor. Under Magneto's control, the blue-white thunder dragon roared and attacked Li Ji and others at the gap. Li Ji bared his teeth slightly and took out a thunder knife. Boom! The sky-high thunder of destruction filled the entire space in an instant. The blue-white cage originally created by Thor also instantly turned into purple thunder with a destructive aura. Thousands of purple thunder dragons bared their fangs and claws, waving their blades, just like a general commanding the direction of the soldier's attack. The galloping and roaring hell dragons roared past, scorching the earth wherever they passed. Even if the 10 magic rings were not used, Li Ji's current strength was not something that could be easily crushed. Thor cooperated with Li Ji's attack, and the thunder snake that had turned into destructive purple thunder attacked Magneto's place like a torrential rain. Magneto was slightly stunned, because he found that the properties of this strange purple thunder were very strange. In addition to the breath of thunder and lightning itself, there was also an inexplicable breath of destruction. And it was precisely because of this powerful breath of destruction that Magneto could not control this thunder and lightning. The stunned expression on Marx's face flashed by. Even if he could not control the power of this destructive thunder, it did not mean that he had no way to compete. The magnetic field was running, and the gravel on the ground flew up. The electromagnetic power burst out, and all the controlled gravel flew out in all directions like cannonballs. All-round electromagnetic cannon attack without dead ends. This attack was like seeing a superstar explosion on the ground. The surroundings were full of light and color, and the electromagnetic force was staggered and biting. Boom boom. When the smoke and dust dissipated, most of the entire mine had been destroyed. The vegetation that was originally not much nearby suffered a devastating blow and turned into charcoal. Li Ji was still holding the thunder blade, and Thor was holding the Thor's hammer. The professor was sitting in a wheelchair. Lan had already set up a space-isolating protective shield for the four of them. It could isolate Magneto from the possibility of interfering with a human body through electromagnetic fields. The place where Magneto originally stood has now become a huge pit, and the land at the bottom of the pit has crystallized. Only where Magneto stood still retained a piece of flat land, which was extremely conspicuous in the entire pit. I think if you are done being angry, then we can have a good chat? I think we should be qualified for an equal dialogue now, Magneto. Li Ji shouted to Magneto in the distance. If you have so much spare energy, why don't we sit down and talk about the possible mass extinction of mutants? Chapter 697 What is madness? In fact, when things got to this point, Magneto couldn't continue to fight. Because Thor had already started firing at full power. The super strong voltage enveloped the entire mining area. Magneto's power comes from magnetism, and he can only exert his greatest ability when the magnetic force can be controlled by him. And Thor's single-round energy concentration is probably the strongest on the entire Earth, and he can even be ranked among the best in the entire universe. Although many of his fighting skills are very rough. But this is because Thor is born with a super strong lightning concentration. After all, if you can blow someone up with one punch, then would you still think about and figure out the skills? Anyway, if you can't blow someone up with one punch, then just increase the energy output and punch again. This is Thor's usual fighting principle. When he went to fight the god of desire with Loki, Thor, who didn't have Thor's hammer at that time, was able to set off a super strong meteor shower covering the entire planet. The sky was full of fire and lightning, and the dark clouds covered the sun without sunlight. Only the light of Thor illuminated the entire planet. Thor has potential, and the huge energy hidden in his body is a great treasure. It is also because of this that Odin has always valued Thor. Even though he was reckless in the past and now he is lazy, Odin has never given up cultivating Thor as his only heir. It is not just because Loki is not his biological daughter, or because Loki is a woman that Odin made such a choice. Because Asgard has become unprecedentedly powerful in Odin's hands, and is famous in the 9 realms. There are countless servants in the kingdom of the gods. To continue this glory, Odin needs someone who can be as powerful as him in the future, or even more powerful than him. Thor has this strength, and what he lacks is only experience and experience. Of course, Odin may not have considered Thor's feelings in this matter. In fact, Odin never considers the feelings of Thor and Loki, a pair of siblings, when doing things. Although the two siblings respect Odin very much, it is hard to say how close they are to Odin. Anyway, compared to the patriarchal Odin, the two prefer their mother Frigga. And now Thor on Earth has raised the artifact left to him by Odin, the hammer of Thor, Jormungandr, and his strength has reached a new level. The thunderous light that covered the sky and the sun even isolated all external electromagnetics. In this trapped space, all magnetic fields began to become extremely violent and chaotic. Li Ji added to this chaos. He released his own destructive purple thunder power and blended it into the thunder power released by Thor. Every trace of electric charge in the air was filled with the power of destructive purple thunder. This energy seriously interfered with Magneto's control of magnetic force, and Lan, who played with space magic as if it was a common thing, divided the entire space into different blocks, making it impossible for Magneto to mobilize the magnetic force between different blocks. This greatly weakened the ability that Magneto Marx could use. And all of this was obviously premeditated. It would not be so perfect if it had not been rehearsed or planned. This is an offensive that is completely aimed at one's own weaknesses. And the only person who can grasp his own strengths and weaknesses so clearly, except for Marx himself, there is only one person in the world. Charles. Magneto uttered the name through his teeth. Do you want to kill me here? Professor Charles pushed his wheelchair forward a little. Max, I just want to talk to you peacefully. You call this peace? Magneto looked at his current situation with some ridicule. The space around him was torn apart, and the thunder of destruction was like a dome. Charles opened his mouth and finally cast his eyes on Li Ji. You should explain to Nightwalker. Professor Charles is not good at talking nonsense. Especially now that he feels that he has done something wrong to Magneto, he doesn't know what to say. If it is a court debate, Professor Charles is still good at things with reason and evidence. But when it comes to fooling or similar things, he really can't play it. Li Ji shrugged. I told you, Mr. Magneto, we are just here to have a chat, a peaceful dialogue. You may not believe it, but you were the first to start. We thought you were just testing whether we had the ability to have an equal dialogue with you. I know that many peerless masters have such quirks. Li Ji pointed at Magneto. If you still want to continue, we don't mind continuing to accompany you. Of course, because of your predecessor. So 3 against 1, I think you should not mind. Marx's face jumped. He originally thought that this Nightwalker was just a scumbag who simply posted chicken soup videos on the internet but was useless. But now Marx found that he was wrong. This guy called Nightwalker is not only a scumbag who likes to post chicken soup videos, but also a scumbag with a very thick skin. You can actually say such a despicable thing so righteously. You have the ability to fight me one-on-one. Of course, the above words can only be passed in his mind, and Marx cannot express them. Now he could only ask in an extremely calm tone, what do you want to talk about? Under this calmness was an indescribable anger. Li Ji did not relax his defense against Magneto. He held the Thunderblade in his hand and the 10 rings glove, 9 rings glove, in his hand. He tried his best to make his tone sincere, although Nightcrawler, Thor, and Lan were all fully prepared for Magneto's possible counterattack. It's very simple, about mutants. As I said before, the great crisis of mutants. Maybe it's about the possible extinction of the entire mutant race. Li Ji looked at Magneto and said. Magneto pulled his face and showed a sun-dry smile. Ridiculous. Do I have to believe what you say? It's up to you whether you believe it or not. I just came to inform you of this news. A prehistoric race of our civilization is floating in space. They call themselves Inhumans. Their mutation ability is much stronger than that of mutants. Li Ji briefly summarized the status of the Inhumans. So, what do you think will happen to mutants if the Terrigen mist spreads on Earth on a large scale? Li Ji said this in a nonchalant tone. He needed to put pressure on Magneto. The entire mutant race may be doomed. Everything you want to build is a delusion. Marx still looked at Li Ji with disdain. I didn't expect that Nightcrawler's ability to tell stories is top-notch in addition to making up chicken soup. Maybe you should go to work in the political propaganda department. Whether it's the United States, China or Russia, they are in urgent need of talent like you. Marx. This is not a joke. Charles looked at Magneto's unbelievable look, and he couldn't help but speak out. This is the information I really discovered. Why do you think I asked you to appear here alone to talk to you about this topic? The emergence of the Inhumans is difficult for us mutants to distinguish between good and bad, whether they are a branch of mutant evolution, or as they say, they are the advancement of mutants. But the Terrigen mist that promotes their mutation is highly toxic to us. This is not a joke. You need to be serious. Professor Charles' feelings are sincere. This made Max frown. Well, let's take a step back, even if it's true. What do you want me to do? I don't think you just come to tell me the news. Li Ji nodded. Let's get to the point, Mr. Marx. For mutants, it's hard to tell the Inhumans from friends and enemies. For our entire Earth civilization, a pre-era civilization floating in outer space is also hard to tell friends and enemies. So on this basis we have a basis for cooperation. After all, you don't want the Terrigen mist to spread everywhere. Who knows what the Inhumans are thinking? Cooperation. Marx seemed to have heard a joke. He laughed. You mean you want me to listen to you and be your dog? Li Ji felt that it was abnormal to communicate with such a paranoid person. He thought that he should either knock him out and let the professor brainwash him. But the professor might not be willing to do this, so Li Ji could only continue, "This is cooperation, just cooperation." Mark smiled, "But the general plan still needs you to formulate, and I only need to execute it, right? Part of it." Li Ji did not deny this. "Ho ha ho ha." Magneto suddenly laughed wildly. "Terrigen mist, the poison gas of mutants, ho ha ho ha." Magneto's laughter was inexplicable, and Li Ji and the professor were all confused. It was not until Magneto was satisfied that he stopped. "Mutant poison, right? Mr. Nightcrawler, you are a superhero, right? At least you think of yourself as a superhero, and I think your companions are the same." Li Ji suddenly had a bad premonition. "What do you want to express, Magneto?" "I want to say that superheroes should protect the lives and property of most innocent civilians." Magneto smiled strangely. "If the Terrigen mist really exists and can kill people carrying the X gene, then I think our way of cooperation should change. It's quite appropriate for you to be my dog." Li Ji's face jumped, and the purple thunder on his hand gushed out and brushed past Magneto's cheek. There were some burnt marks on the edges of Magneto's hair. "You'd better behave yourself, Magneto. I'm not in the mood to fight with you. Either cooperate or I'll beat you into cooperation." Li Ji never thought that there would be a day when he would need to use his fists to convince others. Magneto didn't care about Li Ji's threats, and he didn't care about his current predicament. He just looked nonchalant and said, "Really? It doesn't matter. Anyway, the anti-X plan has been launched, so let everyone be buried with me." Chapter 698. This is madness. Anti-X plan. In fact, it is not the first time that Professor Charles has heard Magneto Marx mention this term. When Magneto first wanted to stir up a large-scale conflict between mutants and the human government, Marx mentioned this matter. Although the conflict did not really break out on a large scale due to the misdirection of a certain chef, the anti-X plan shown by Magneto is actually very operational. Push the mutants to the Jedi, then unite their compatriots who are in absolute danger, and then fight back against humans in one breath. First of all, let's not talk about the number of mutants. Just say that many mutants among the mutants are not capable of fighting, or many of their abilities are useless, such as the mutant ability of farting with their mouths. So push the entire mutant race to a state of extinction, and then enter a Jedi counterattack. Can the conventional human regime be overthrown in the end? Professor Charles is not optimistic about this. Because the human government is not a lamb to be slaughtered, they will also have a huge counterattack force. It does not mean that you can completely fight against the human government by uniting the power of all mutants. For example, superheroes such as Iron Man, Captain America, Nightcrawler, etc. will definitely stand up to fight this war, as well as Shield, etc. If the war really reaches the level of world destruction, perhaps forces such as Kunlun and Kamardaki that do not care about the change of secular regimes will intervene and force the war to stop. So Professor Charles prefers peaceful evolution, allowing mutants to gradually gain the right to speak in human regimes, and then reach a balanced dialogue ability. Just like the mutant country in Tuvalu now, this is the first step he hopes to see, and the step is a bit abrupt. But Professor Charles still hopes that Tuvalu will gain a foothold, and he is even willing to do his best to help Tuvalu's regime stabilize. So when he heard Magneto mention the anti-X plan again, Professor Charles suddenly had a bad premonition. The reason is simple. Since he can think of the plan of pushing all mutants to the Jedi and counterattack is a huge danger, then Magneto will not think of it? Don't underestimate Marx's intelligence, although his life experience makes him a little paranoid in character. But genius and madman are often only separated by a piece of paper. So when Professor Charles heard Magneto's almost hysterical laughter, he was shocked. He roared at Magneto, "What did you do? Max? What do you mean everyone will be buried with you? What is the anti-X plan? Don't force me to take off your helmet and brainwash you to find out all this. You know, I can do it now." Charles threatened Max. Because of Max's words, Li Ji stood next to Lan and whispered, "If this madman doesn't want to speak later, then teleport me to his side and I will take off his helmet." Lan glanced at Li Ji. She gathered her long hair, moved her 10 fingers and said softly, "Be careful." Li Ji nodded. But the back plan prepared by the two did not come in handy, because Magneto did not look so stubborn. When Charles threatened him, Magneto stopped laughing hysterically. Then he stood up straight, and glanced at Charles, Thor, Li Ji and Lan with a mocking look. "I feel your fear, Charles. You can't hide it from me. Although I don't have the ability to read minds, I know your every move very well. Magneto looked at Professor Charles with contempt. Want to know what the anti-X plan is? No problem, I can tell you. Because even if you know it now, it's too late. After saying this, Magneto simply used the magnetic field to mold the gravel into a chair, and then he sat down comfortably. I'm not an idiot, Charles. I know very well how big the risk is to push the mutants to the edge and then fight back. It is very likely that tens of millions of people will be killed or injured, but the final outcome will still be failure. I don't like failure, I only like success. I want to see the world changed. So do you think I will allow this to happen? Luigi, Charles and others listened to Magneto's words quietly. And creating conflicts between mutants and humans is only the first step of this plan, and there is also an important second step. Charles said with a smile. And the most important second step of this plan has now been implemented, and the results are already visible. What exactly is the second step? Charles asked through gritted teeth. Look, don't get excited, my old friend. The second step of the plan is actually a good thing. Magneto was very satisfied with Charles's angry expression. Because only in this way could he feel that things were once again under his control. From the Hydra, to the remnants. Including many ordinary people who are unaware of the situation, and even some government officials, they all regard mutants as poison. Remember Stryker? The general who was euthanized, he hated mutants because of his son, Master Illusion. And there are many such people. In addition to people like Stryker who are determined to eliminate mutants by force, I know another group of people. Many research institutions including MIT and New York University have corresponding plans. Although it is very secretive, I know what they are doing. They are making anti-mutant serum. Just like purifying serum to eliminate vampires, they think mutants are a disease, a cancer of humans. So they want to completely wipe out mutant genes. Magneto's words made Charles' face jump, but Luigi on the side was not surprised. Because the ending of the movie X-Men seems to be that mutant serum is made, and then all mutants are cured. It is really a good happy end movie. Magneto continued his condescending attitude and said, so I have been thinking, since mutants are a minority in this world, we have become cancer and viruses in the eyes of ordinary people. So what if things are reversed? There was a hint of madness in Magneto's smile, and Charles' eyes were wide open. The professor opened his mouth and took a long time to say a sentence. What do you mean? Magneto Marx said proudly, what do I mean? I mean that if mutants become the mainstream in the world, 80% of the people in the world are mutants. Then compared with ordinary humans, who is the virus? And this is the second part of the anti-X plan, reversing the X gene dominant rate. Magneto couldn't help but smile. This news was so shocking that Luigi almost couldn't hold the knife. The Magneto in this world seems to be a little scary? Exclamation mark. Professor Charles was so shocked that he could hardly speak. After a long while, he said, no, it's impossible. Magneto nodded, no, Charles, it's possible. In fact, I have been thinking about these issues since I left SHIELD and the X-Men. I was inspired by the stories of many revolutionaries in the East. Unite the majority, isolate a part, and strike a small group. Then the destructiveness and cost of the revolution can be minimized. As I told you before, Charles, violence cannot solve any problems. Only revolution can. And in order to achieve this goal, I have spent nearly half a century from the 1970s to now to lay out. Let the tentacles of the Brotherhood of Mutants spread to every corner of the world. It took me almost 40 years, until 7 years ago, I finally developed the first X-gene dominant drug. Do you remember our research back then? The X gene actually exists in everyone's body, just dominant and recessive. What if I induce those recessive genes? Even if they can't get much X mutant ability, they still become mutants. When 80% of the people in this world become mutants, who is qualified to say that mutants are viruses? Does the person who said this want to be an enemy of the whole world? Professor Charles felt cold hands and feet. Even if what you said is true, you can't make everyone in the world inject your medicine. Magneto shrugged. Indeed, I don't have this ability. So I let those stupid people choose to voluntarily inject. In various ways. At the beginning, it was a drug, a kind of mental hallucinogen. In fact, this kind of drug has a small burden on the body and is more environmentally friendly than traditional drugs. At least it is difficult for people to die from taking it. And this is also the most primitive X-gene medicine, I named it Heaven Number 3. Wait. Heaven Number 3 is not only a drug, but also an X-gene medicine. Li Ji was so surprised that he couldn't speak. You have to know that when he got into trouble at the beginning, and then walked step by step on the road of heroism, he couldn't escape some of the things at the beginning. For example, the Stanich family and the drugs they sold, and the most important one is Heaven Number 3. Li Ji has wiped out many magic dens that sell this drug. Oh, Nightcrawler. I've heard of you. It seems like you've ruined a lot of my business. But it's meaningless. Heaven III is just the most basic drug. Its performance is unstable and requires a lot of injections. That's why I made this drug into a drug. Its advantage is that it has a long latent time and is not easy to be discovered and cause vigilance. Magneto looked at Li Ji and said contemptuously. After that, its improved version, Heaven's Gate, was released, which is a new drug specially provided to those upper-class people for injection. It has fewer side effects and can also extend the activity of the X gene. It also has a longer latent time. Magneto said these words very proudly. But not everyone takes drugs. Charles' tone was already a little angry. Indeed, so I am constantly improving it to reduce the side effects of the drug infinitely. I will not really promote it until it can be mass-produced and does not bring side effects. Magneto pointed at Charles. You just said that I can't let everyone inject this drug, but my inability doesn't mean that others can't. For example, government injections, including neonatal vaccinations, hepatitis B vaccinations, malaria vaccinations, tetanus vaccinations, comprehensive antibody vaccinations, antibiotics, etc. The industry of the Brotherhood of Mutants controls some of the most important medical chemical factories in the world. The basic raw materials I produce supply nearly 1/3 of the original preparations of antibiotics and vaccines in the world. I think that now, there should still be hundreds of millions of people in the world who have injected vaccines with X drugs, or swallowed the antibiotics and vitamins I produced. And there are still many antibiotics and various vaccines circulating on the market. Magneto looked at Professor Charles and others with a faint look. What do you think? Do you think my plan is not feasible now? The ultimate goal of the anti-X plan, to turn the whole world into mutants. Charles, Thor, Lan and Li Ji, everyone was speechless. Magneto taught everyone a lesson with his actual actions. If a crazy genius is willing to endure for half a century, how much change he can bring to the world. At this moment, perhaps the foundation of the world's rule has begun to shake. P.S. Magneto's plan for all mutants was inspired by the first X-Men movie. In that movie, Magneto wanted to use Rogue to turn all the people in New York into mutants, but the plan failed. And from the movie, Magneto's plan is too stingy and does not fit his style as a global villain. In addition, I got inspiration from the special food that removed the X gene in Wolverine 3, and converted it into an industry that Marx can operate better. Manipulating global food or seeds is basically impossible for the Mutant Brotherhood. Because the world is strictly regulated, this is a national strategic issue. So after saying so much, please support us, subscribe to the genuine version, and remember to vote. There are really few votes now. Chapter 699 Sentinel Attack. 48 hours before Li Ji and his companions confronted Magneto. South America, Chile. After a shaky 7-hour flight, Strange felt like he was about to fall apart. Compared to the various planes he had taken before, whether it was the first-class cabin of a civil aircraft such as the Airbus A380 or the Boeing 747, this plane, which was modified from the former Soviet Union's Il-76 transport aircraft, had a very poor experience in terms of comfort. Because the aircraft's load capacity is limited, the necessary load is used to load food and medicine, so the ride is naturally not very good. After all, a sofa in the first-class cabin of a civil aviation weighs nearly 100 kilograms. For cargo transportation, a sofa of this weight is too wasteful just for riding. Doctors Without Borders is a completely non-profit organization, and most of its organizational expenses come from donations. So they can't install large and comfortable chairs in this kind of aircraft that transports both people and goods. Anyway, the leather-covered iron chairs left by the former Soviet Union, leaning against the sides of the cabin wall, can still be used. Then there is no need to update a set of better chairs. Strange followed the Il-76 from other countries in South America to Chile. They stopped in Brazil for a while, so the whole journey was as long as 7 hours. Strange felt that his butt was about to be shaken apart by the steel chair. He was a doctor, not a professionally trained soldier, and this kind of hard work was really not what he was good at. But the long journey finally came to the end, and Valparaiso, Chile finally arrived. Sam, who was sent by Doctors Without Borders to be Strange's assistant, patted his shoulder. "Doctor, we're here." Sam saw that Strange had his eyes closed and thought that Strange was asleep. Strange waved his hand and pushed Sam away. "I'm awake, don't wake me. The sound insulation quality of this broken plane is too poor, and I'm a little nervous now." Sam shook his head helplessly. "Then I'll go and arrange for people to unload the goods first." What Sam meant by unloading was that a considerable amount of vaccines were obtained from the United States and Europe, including vaccines for malaria and dengue fever, which are common diseases in South America. Chile is a relatively good country in South America, so except for a small number of vaccines that are given to medical institutions in poor areas of Chile, most of them are transferred through Chile to other more remote and poor countries. Sam directed the porters to carry these important medicines. You should know that the price of any vaccine is not cheap. In this world, medical resources are getting more and more expensive. As an old man who has served Doctors Without Borders for 5 years, Sam is still very grateful to the donors of this batch of medicines. By the way, Lancashire Medical Chemical Group. We have to thank them for donating more than $30 million of medicines to Doctors Without Borders at one time, including antibiotics and various vaccines. I heard that they will donate tens of millions of dollars of medicines in the future. Sam still remembers the words of the representative of Lancashire Chemical Group: "Hand these medicines to those who need them." Whenever he thinks of such generous rich people in the world who are willing to donate to the medical cause of mankind for free, Sam feels more motivated to work. When the medicines were almost transported, Strange finally recovered from the feeling of neurasthenia. Strange shook his head. "Sam, I should have gone to Eastern Europe before." Compared with Eastern Europe, which was devastated by the war, Chile is already an advanced country. I think Doctors Without Borders made a wrong arrangement. Sam looked at Strange, who was covering his head, and said, "Doctor, sometimes we also need some compromises." The rich man in South America donated nearly $20 million in various materials to our organization. His only request is that the organization can consider sending some outstanding doctors to guide the improvement of the medical level here. To be honest, this request is difficult to refuse. And there are not a few poor areas in South America. The capitalists bought mines at cheap prices, and then hired local people to mine at cheap prices. Moreover, the labor intensity and labor indicators of many mines and plantations are very unreasonable. In fact, there are many places here that need us, because many miners or plantation employees have no money to go to the hospital. Sam explained. "Okay." Strange nodded and understood. "In that case, then let's do it." When will Sam start working? It is scheduled to start tomorrow. We will first go to a plantation dozens of kilometers away. First, we will voluntarily vaccinate the workers with dengue fever and malaria vaccines. Check whether anyone here has AIDS, etc. Other detailed work will be gradually carried out later. Sam roughly described the itinerary. As for you, doctor, except for the free clinic tour with us tomorrow, you will be in the local hospital in the following days. After all, your technology must be matched with professional equipment. Strange waved his hand. "I understand. In that case, then I will go buy a cup of coffee first. I hope there is a place to sell Starbucks coffee in this airport, and it is better not to have the terrible amount of sugar added like the South Americans." Strange's work in South America has just begun. This is his journey as a volunteer doctor. Here he is no longer an authority on the Lancet or medical. Without all identities, he is just a simple doctor. Face the patient, find out the cause, or cure, or give up. He is no longer an omnipotent doctor. Although he must face failure, Strange feels for the first time that his pressure is not so heavy. Time: when Magneto attacks the Hydra gold mine. Location: Bermuda. Red Skull Schmidt got another bad news. The Hydra gold mine located on the border of Chile in South America was attacked by the Brotherhood of Mutants. And it is very likely to be lost. The loss of the gold mine is only a loss of part of the funds, but the loss of the associated rare earth mine is a huge loss for Hydra. It is becoming more and more difficult to buy rare earths around the world. If you lose your own mine, it will be difficult to buy rare earths without being noticed by those who are interested. You know, Hydra is still an underground organization. Red Skull pressed the button to communicate with Dr. Rice with an unfriendly look. Dr. Rice, You reported to me a month ago. Sentinel-1 has begun mass production. This project has consumed a lot of our funds, and I hope to see results. Dr. Rice on the other end of the communication. Natural leader, we now have more than 70 usable Sentinel robots. Very good, then I need my Sentinel warriors to move and go to South America to teach the mutants a profound lesson. Red Skull has given the order, and the mutant hunting order for the Sentinel robots has begun to be issued. Chapter 700 The Beginning of Disaster. In Bermuda, the engines of heavy transport planes are roaring. The huge noise hurts the eardrums, and the hot air jets from the turbofan engines disturb the light refraction of the air. It is like a dreamlike scene. 70 Sentinel robots were loaded onto 4 transport planes, and Dr. Rice personally participated in the whole process. Because for him, the Sentinel robots are his hard work, and he needs to ensure that every step is foolproof. In order to ensure the victory of the first battle of the Sentinel robots this time, Dr. Rice specially applied to the Red Skull Schmidt for the use of Scarlet Witch Wanda. Scarlet Witch Wanda is the daughter of Magneto's 2 children. Her mutant ability is to modify the probability of an event to a certain extent. And this mutant ability can be improved through mental training. At present, Scarlet Witch and her brother Quicksilver are receiving special training from Schmidt. The Red Skull hopes that after the 2 siblings reach the best and strongest state, they will give the entire mutant brotherhood, especially Magneto, a fatal blow at one time. This is one of Schmidt's trump cards, and he is not ready to release it now. The training course of Scarlet Witch sounds a bit incredible. Schmidt will let Scarlet Witch stay in a room with a shooter. There is a target in front of the shooter, but the shooter can't aim. To be precise, the shooter is blindfolded and shoots 8 times. There's even an angle error of 90 degrees or 180 degrees with a target. And Scarlet Witch's responsibility is to use her ability to forcibly modify the probability of the bullet hitting the core of the target. It is obviously a directional shooting, and the shooting direction and the target are not on the same direction at all. But Wanda used her ability to forcibly correct the way the bullet flies, not relying on metal control or magnetic field. After all, Wanda is not Magneto. She uses luck. To be precise, it is to make all the small probability things happen at the same time. After the bullet is fired, it hits the wall to form a refraction, and then continues to refract to just the angle. Finally, it happens to hit the target. This is Wanda's ability, to modify the probability of all things. She can cast a spell on herself so that others can't see her. But this kind of invisibility is not invisibility. It just happens that when everyone faces her, she happens to be in the blind spot of sight. So the fact that you can't see her doesn't mean she's invisible, it's just that you simply didn't see her. Wanda can also turn brothers who were originally harmonious into enemies, and this is not based on any mind control. It just happens that all the conflicts and resentments between the 2 brothers erupted in a very short period of time because of various trivial matters, and finally broke up. Dr. Rice attached great importance to this operation, so he specially found Wanda, who had been brainwashed by Hydra since she was a child. Wanda is a woman with beautiful long red hair, a curvy figure, round and slender thighs, and a face that is not very delicate but very charming. A straight nose, plump lips, and a pair of very bright and even sharp eyes. The white skin seems to lack blood color due to lack of sunlight. What to modify? Wanda's voice is as cold as her expression, like a machine. But how much emotion do you expect her to have when she is brainwashed and controlled? Dr. Rice is very satisfied with Wanda, because mutants are only in 2 states that Dr. Rice is most satisfied with. One is when you die, and the other is when you are completely controlled and enslaved. And Wanda belongs to the latter. Let our plan succeed this time, and ensure that all the Sentinel robots can strictly implement their missions, so that the great cause of exterminating mutants will be successful and continue. Dr. Rice stated his requirements. Then Wanda's hands emitted a burst of red light, and strange particles filled the air. It was invisible, but there was a feeling that something had changed. This feeling was very strange, but Dr. Rice didn't care. Because it was like playing a game. You have to find an assistant to open the buff before starting a team battle. But Dr. Rice didn't know now whether Wanda added a red buff or a blue buff to the Hydra this time, or a terrible green buff. But no matter what Dr. Rice thinks now, or what he thinks in the future, it doesn't matter anymore. Because the Sentinel robots that were buffed by the Scarlet Witch have taken off and are flying quickly towards South America under the heavy transport aircraft. When playing cards, the bomb is played first, and the big is played first when starting a team battle. How can the buff of the top assistant be understood by ordinary mortals? Time point, now. Magneto was calm in the electromagnetic cage designed by Li Ji and others. He didn't think he had done anything terrible. Mutation is risky, even if it is what Magneto said, simply converting recessive genes into dominant ones. Magneto said there is no gene mutation here, because in addition to natural awakening, mutant abilities can often be awakened through strong stimulation from certain things. This kind of external mutation and stimulation will strongly stimulate the X gene, causing it to react violently in a short period of time, just like the violent reaction of white phosphorus meeting pure oxygen. And under the stimulation of this reaction, the mutant ability will awaken to a certain extent. Magneto said that his drug is to extend the activity of the X gene, rather than let everyone mutate, because a large number of mutations will attract the attention of the government and interested parties. This way of extending the activity reacts more slowly, turning the X gene from recessive to dominant, but because the process of this change lacks the violent reaction of the X gene, the mutant ability lacks the soil for birth. But this is after all the activation of the X gene. Li Ji didn't believe how many experiments Magneto had done, and whether the final results of the experiments were really harmless as he said. Because Magneto had just completed the research and development of this drug for a few years. It was impossible for him to track and observe the genetic mutation process of an experimental subject, human, for 20 years. Even if the mutation caused by this drug was completely harmless as Magneto said, there was still an important problem. That was the problem of the Terrigen Mist of the Inhumans. Now it was no longer the millions of mutants in the world who had to face the Terrigen Mist. This group had expanded to hundreds of millions. So, I think, if you want to talk about cooperation, it's better for me to take the lead. This is no longer a simple mutant problem, Mr. Nightcrawler. If you really care about the fate of mankind. Magneto sat on the chair and said to Li Ji indifferently. The thunder in Li Ji's hand was roaring, and he wanted to kill Magneto directly now. If Charles hadn't held his hand tightly and didn't let go, Li Ji would have done so. Damon was lying on the ground, like a frozen salted fish. He was thinking about his life after winning the lottery 190 million euros. Even if he spent most of it on taxes and donations, he could at least keep 10 million euros. This was enough for him to splurge, and he could even buy a small yacht and a nice villa in Los Angeles, although he couldn't afford Beverly Hills in Hollywood. Just as Damon was thinking about this and that, he found that his hands and feet could move. It seemed that the timeliness of Magneto's magnetic field had expired. Damon got up and patted the dust off his body. I'm leaving quickly. It's not a good idea to stay here. If Magneto comes out later, he might kill me if he's in a bad mood. Damon ran quickly towards the periphery of the mine. He remembered that there should be an all-terrain vehicle at a patrol point 2 kilometers away. As long as Magneto didn't destroy it, Damon could use the all-terrain vehicle to escape first. Fortunately, this thing is still intact. Damon was somewhat glad that the ATV was still intact, even though the other Hydra mercenaries in this place had died. But he was still good, wasn't he? Damon was ready to leave this damn place. But he heard the roar of an airplane overhead, and he looked up. 4 black spots in the sky were flying towards the Hydra gold mine. Hydra reinforcements? So stupid, don't they know that there is no point in doing this? I guess they will be wiped out. Damon muttered and drove away in the ATV. His destination was a plantation 70 kilometers away, which was the largest gathering place nearby, and there was also a shuttle bus to Valparaiso, Chile. Chile, a plantation under the Costa Group. Strange was so busy, and free compulsory vaccinations really didn't need Strange to do it. But neurological diseases, including lumbar nerve strain and scapular nerve necrosis, are common diseases of heavy manual laborers. These all need Strange to check in person. When examining these patients, Strange suddenly shuddered. Sam noticed this and immediately asked, "Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" Sam was afraid that Strange was infected with dengue fever or malaria here, because the mosquitoes here are too powerful and they are all sources of infection. Strange self-diagnosed and shook his head. "No, it's okay. It shouldn't be dengue fever or malaria, maybe just some sudden tremor," Strange said casually. But what was the feeling that he just felt like he was being stared at by something? Strange shook his head and continued to work. Hercules 1 calling, we have arrived at the designated airspace. Do you want to drop the clear Sentinel? Hydra's transport plane has arrived. At the Hydra base, Dr. Rice ordered, "Activate the Sentinel and drop it to clear out the mutants." "Understood, activate the Sentinel," and the clearing plan begins. Dr. Rice's men began to act. The Sentinel robots in South America were activated one by one. These robots, which were somewhat like the Terminator T-800 combined with the Iron Man, began to flash their red monitors. No breathing, no heartbeat. Only the sound of the engine starting and pistons, and the strange red light. When the last order to eliminate the mutants was entered, the cabin door of the transport plane was opened. Now it should be time for them to fly off the plane and start killing people. But these Sentinel robots did not move. Among them, the Sentinel robot numbered A1 standing in the front of the transport plane codenamed Hercules No. 1 not only did not jump out of the cabin door, but raised the weapon in his hand. It was an arm cannon directly connected to his arm, a high-energy pulse device, a weapon that simulated the laser impact of Cyclops. Level 1 energy storage begins. 3-2. What the hell is going on outside? Are those robots broken? Why don't you go out? The captain of Hercules 1 said to his co-pilot with some dissatisfaction, "Go and see what's going on." The co-pilot reluctantly opened the cabin door, but the moment he opened the cabin door, he only saw the red light in the sky and the cold steel color behind the red light. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.